call.
Parker.
Here.
Miss Olenich.
Here.
Perfect. Olson.
Here.
Zittergruen.
Here.
Chisel.
Here.
Whittle.
Here.
Neal.
Here. Okay. So first off, it's my pleasure to be able to recognize the Fair Housing Month for the realtors, and they were kind enough to come in, so we got a picture of them. Northeast Iowa Regional Board of Realtors, and the proclamation is for April 2025, Fair Housing Month Proclamation. Whereas the Fair Housing Act, enacted on April 11th, 1968, enshrined into federal law the goal of eliminating racial segregation and ending housing discrimination in the United States. And whereas the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, family status, national origin, and disability, and commits recipients of federal funding to affirmatively further fair housing in their communities. And whereas Decorah is committed to the mission and intent of Congress to provide fair and equal housing opportunities for all, and whereas our social fabric, the economy, health, and environment are strengthened in diverse, inclusive communities, and whereas more than 50 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act, discrimination persists and many communities remain segregated, and whereas acts of housing discrimination and barriers to equal housing opportunity are repugnant to common sense of decency and fairness. Therefore, be it resolved that Mayor of Decorah does hereby declare month of April 2025 as Fair Housing Month. In Decorah, an inclusive community commitment to fair housing and to promoting appropriate activities by private and public entities to provide and advocate for equal housing opportunities for all residents and prospective residents of Decorah. I want to thank the realtors for bringing this forth, doing the photo shoot. Thank you very much. Okay, public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council?
Yes, please.
Come right up, and if you had something to pass out, I think you said, started at Emily, and she can hand it down. Then just state your name and address.
Thomas C. Johnson, 110 Winnebago Street, number 301. Today, I express concern the Parks and Recreation Board has lost sight of why the vitality of our trails is so important to our city of Decorah. I say this because they have largely ignored letters submitted by city taxpayers. They voted on trails some had never walked, and during the last two meetings, they called on and thus privileged a person, a non-city taxpayer, for insights on equestrian use. Right now, as we think about the here and now in April of 2025, Decorah has a reputation as a mountain biking and trail running destination. We're also thinking about hiking, bird watching as part of that as well. To help make it so, Decorah Human Powered Trails has put in thousands of hours over the past decades to maintain, to promote, and enhance our trails. Just last year, they did over 500 hours of volunteer work on our trails, like physical work on our trails, just to our side here. This year, as in past years, visitors will come to our city to experience our trails. When it comes to our visitors, I point to the Trust for Public Lands, a recent study. It just came out this past March of 2025. Economic benefits of mountain biking. Lots of key findings, but one is this. Mountain biking tourists spend an average of $416 per visit, contributing to local businesses like lodging, restaurants, and retail establishments. Once again, this year, this spring, this summer, this fall, visitors will come to our city to experience our trails and spend their money in our businesses. Simply put, allowing equestrian use on our trails, which comes at the request of a social club primarily comprised of non-city residents, and thus non-city taxpayers. I can't stress this enough. These are non-city residents and non-city taxpayers. It's an uncertain and unpredictable proposition that will make potential visitors question whether or not to come to our city. They've got plenty of places to go. Furthermore, allowing equestrian use puts our trails at great risk, and it puts the financial well-being of our businesses at great risk. In the coming weeks, as the Parks and Recreation Board discusses rules and regulations pertaining to equestrian use, I ask City Council, I ask y'all to push the board to preserve the vitality of our trails. By doing so, Decorah will continue to be a mountain biking and trail running destination, and our city will continue to benefit socially, culturally, and I would say of incredible importance to the here and now, benefit financially. And I have a busy meeting, so thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay, the 2025 Raceway update and schedule. And you're filling in for Zach tonight?
Right. Zach had to go as part of his role in the fire department. He had to, unfortunately, go up to Rochester today. So included in the council packet is a summary of last year's overall numbers. Grab it here real quick. So a couple things they wanted to highlight. They had 166 drivers from 5 different states. As far as California, with 1 out of California, 1 out of Kansas, 23 out of Wisconsin, 26 out of Minnesota, as well as 115 from 32 different cities here in Iowa. They had 10 races with an average attendance of 600 people in the grandstand and another 200 people in the pits, so a total average of 8,000 people. Total attendance for, excuse me, not an average, total people in attendance around 8,000 people for 2024. For 2025, and again, for those that are familiar with, a few years ago, the city used to have a memorandum of understanding with the Fair Winneshiek Raceway, but it was really, it's not so much an MOU as much as it was a communication from Winneshiek Raceway on what their schedule was to be and what the overall expectations were from them. We have shifted to now a presentation because, I shouldn't call it a presentation, more an update, as well as letting know thoughts of schedule for 2025. Because Iowa code does prohibit, and I knock on wood, I haven't heard this for quite some time actually. City code or state code does prohibit any cities, counties from adopting an ordinance, resolution, or any regulation that would impede the use of the fair grounds. So we, as a city, are not able to adopt anything enforceable within the fairgrounds. Since then, we haven't had, I believe, calls to the police department that race has gone on at 10:01. Those numbers are way down, if not non-existent anymore. But their schedule for 2025 would start in May 3rd, with the last race being August 16th. And they do run primarily with the weekends. The only weekly racing or race they do during the week is during Fair Week, which this year, June 14th is listed, but I don't believe that.
Gotta be July.
That's not right.
July 14th.
I would say it's in July.
Yep.
There it is. Should be the 8th there. Yeah, July 8th is Fair Week. Mm-hmm.
No,
Yep.
that's the weekly race.
Yeah, they don't race on that Sunday. They instead race during the week on Fair Week. I know Zach wanted to be here to present on this, but again, he had to, for the fire department, had to go run up to Rochester today.
Okay. Thank you for the report.
Yep.
Okay, city manager, department head, and council reports. We'll start with you, Travis.
So many projects, quite frankly. So many projects going on right now. Hoping to get a lot of them across the finish line, whether it's currently we're in, I think, our 4th or 5th rendition of the DOT's review of Carlson Park. That one should be ready for first review by Park Board, and then plan to set a public hearing in May for council for putting that out to bid. Dalen property. That one's currently out to bid, set to go out for fundraising efforts right now. Hively Street, obviously that's something that we've been talking about a lot, and as part of the consent agenda, that's one of the items. As a reminder, we have to first award the project before we can do change orders to reduce the overall design width. And so there are 2 consent agenda items in there, one on the award, following by professional service agreement for the redesign. Quarry Street's underway. The chip seal project, we're going to have that public hearing and potential award tonight. Airport project, wastewater treatment plant upgrades, water meter replacement. The list goes on and on and on, quite frankly. And I'm largely pointing this all out just in the event that you have been trying to maybe you've sent me an email and I didn't get back to you. I apologize for that. Reach back out, give me a call. Keeping an eye on proposed legislation. Council all heard me talk about that, especially the property tax bills, both in the House and Senate. Now that we're past the second week of funnel, now priorities will shift more towards the funding side, because essentially now any bill still alive, it's alive until the end of session. So I have reached out to Representative Bergen as well as Senator Clemish on, if council remembers, we talked about inviting them to essentially a Saturday town hall. I shouldn't call it town hall. It was supposed to be a work session with the council to discuss legislation and impacts on Decorah. I have not heard back from them on upcoming Saturdays. I know with Easter weekend, that's going to be a difficulty for a lot of people. I've heard back from some council members on availability for Saturday mornings. If I haven't heard back, would you please let me know what you'd have for upcoming availability. That's it for me.
Okay.
Just want to give a quick update on the software with the utility billing. We are finding ourselves do a lot of updating and maintenance, so it's not going as smooth, but we kind of figured that would happen. The bills did not go out until today. So again, if you have any residents that reach out to you, let them know it's a process that we're working through, and obviously we're going to work with them with late fees and stuff due to the fact that they're not going out by the 1st. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know and we can discuss it.
Okay. Brent,
I have nothing this evening.
Kirsten.
You want to do Christopher, or you want to wait?
Oh,
Okay.
the-
Okay.
oh, then I'll go with Christopher.
Chamber Gala is coming up on Friday, the April 25th. That will be at Impact Coffee from 6:30 to 9. You can go on the Chamber website. Members, it's $50. Non-members, $60. This year's theme is The Office. So if you have a favorite Office character from the TV show, think about getting an outfit to wear for that. There will be themed games, signature drinks, and food by U2 Barbecue, and raffles and live auctions. Please try to show up, everybody, if you can. It's a good fundraiser for the chamber, and we appreciate your being there. That's it.
Christopher, do you have anything you'd like to contribute?
I have nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Thanks, Mayor. First, I was witness to the mayor's Robin Hood-esque arrow flinging abilities at the grand opening of the new city archery range. And I want to thank the Parks and Rec Board and all the staff and volunteers who've been working to bring this reality or this vision into reality for a long time. It's great to try these little experiments, to try new things, and to see how popular they are. I've actually noticed people out there using it a few times. Maybe the novelty will wear off, but I've talked to a lot of people very excited about this opportunity to have in the community. So really, thanks so much to those who made it happen. And the second comment, I think, just for the sake of efficiency, it's easier to make the comment here than to pull a bunch of things off the consent agenda. So I want to just say that, well, let me first start by thanking my colleagues very much for rolling up their sleeves and diving into the Hively proposal and really considering it together and having good substantive conversation about how the proposal can best realize the city's deepest values and priorities. I'm extremely grateful that we focused on the plan, that we talked about ways that improved it respectfully, even when we disagreed. And I'm glad that what we came to represents an improvement that I think will make Decorah safer and better, not just after pouring the thing, but in the long run. I think it'll save us money in the long run. I think it'll make the place more pleasant, and I think it was worth the work, even if it sometimes had the mayor frustrated with me. Just genuinely, thank you. So I won't pull these things out of consent agenda to make a big show of voting against it, because I think it's still too wide. I think that it's just good that we can all move forward on the same page. I encourage and urge my colleagues to continue to learn about these issues, to consider different perspectives, and to realize that this work, making land use decisions, is truly the most important lasting work we do. It's worth the time. Thank you.
Randy?
Well, I normally don't have a whole lot, but looking at the consent agenda tonight, we're asked again to close.
Do you have your microphone on?
I do. Okay,
Good.
there we go. Is that
Thank
better?
you. Yep.
We're asked again to close part of Washington Street for 2 different nights. I'm going to throw out a crazy idea. What would it take to close that from the alley to Water Street and make, in the summertime like this, just make that basically one large downtown parklet that could be used on a daily basis throughout the summer for the tourists?
It's a great idea.
Instead of closing it one night on Wednesday night and then again closing it again on Thursday night, just leave it closed. And if the weather's decent, people could take their meals from the business district down there and eat there, because it does stay fairly shaded because of the taller buildings in that neck of the woods. Just random thought that I thought I'd throw out there for everybody. So
We get that on our agenda for discussion soon.
I think that
Yep.
that would be a good idea.
Yeah, that's
I-
a great
I
idea.
think you'll get a lot of
I
people on board.
appreciate you
Yep.
bringing that forth.
Maybe we could get it in front of the businesses in that area too, so they
Mhm.
know that it's coming up.
Okay. Cody?
Yep, a couple things. I got a ride-along training session with the fire department a couple weeks ago. I got all suited up. I got to be a part of the pyrotechnics, if you will. And it was exhilarating for me, and also just eye-opening, and just made me really respect even more the men and women that are volunteering to do this, and the amount of training that they're holding themselves accountable for, and how seriously they take everything. It was really interesting to see the camaraderie and feel it. Also, I got to go into the facility and feel the house burn around me, and that was exciting and also kind of scary, and just everybody was super accommodating and helpful, and it was a really great experience for me, and I'm really appreciative of it. So thanks to the fire department, big respect. Also, I bear witness to the rally that was held on Saturday, and it was a really good, safe environment for people to make their voices heard and express their First Amendment rights, and I think that it's really important to keep the First Amendment as strong as it can be, and it's the First Amendment for a reason, and it's one of our greatest strengths and privileges as citizens of this country, and I respect what happened, and I was glad I was there for it. So, also just that.
Thank you. Emily?
Well, everybody always steals my thunder, but I think I'm just still going to say thanks to the fire department as well. I know it's been a rough weekend, and all of our public safety, I think, in the last few weeks have had some crazy things going on. So I really do appreciate all the men and women who put their lives on the line every day for all of us. So thank you. I really appreciate that. I also got a chance to get out to the archery range right at the very end. And as a longbow shooter, I am so excited to have somewhere to go shoot my bow. And I've got compound shooters in my family and longbow shooters, and so it was really fun to get out there. So thank you to all the volunteers and everyone who helped make that a reality. I also, you look through the consent agenda, I do think it's worth the shout out of like, we've got so much going on and what an incredible community we live in. I feel so blessed from anything from mountain biking to yoga to Nordic Fest coming up and all the wonderful, vibrant things we have going on this summer. So thank you to everyone who puts their heart and soul to this community, because I think that's what makes us so special is all the people here. And like Cody, I was at the rally. I did speak at the rally. I will continue to speak out on behalf of the Constitution and everyone's civil rights that right now are seemingly under attack. And I do think we do have a responsibility as officials sworn to the Constitution, no matter what level of government we are. Government has a role to play in people's lives. And it is important that we remind everyone the role of government and also the role of individuals and the ability to uphold their First Amendment rights and to say those things. So it was a great event. It probably won't be the last, so thank you to everyone who came out and to the public safety on that end, who I know made sure that it was a safe event, and we're keeping their eyes on that as well, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So that's me.
I know that Mark handed these out at the event. I'm going to run through just the sponsors real quick, because I was impressed by how many people had actually donated, not people, but businesses. Expedition Archery, LLC, Anthem Archery, LLC, Toppling Goliath Brewing Company, Iowa Rotocast Plastics Incorporated, Decorah Bank and Trust, Helms Funeral Home, Harmon Realty, LLC, Spahn and Rose Lumber Company, Decorah Electric Incorporated, Marso Electric,
Recording in progress.
Libel Habitat Solutions Incorporated, and anonymous donators, and Matthew Nahan and Melissa Cook. I was impressed by the number, so thank you very much. Okay, consent agenda.
Item A, minutes of the March 17th, 2025 council meeting. B, claims. C, amendment Class C retail alcohol license outdoor service, May 1, 2025 through August 31, 2025, Impact Coffee Trivia Night. D, renewal Class C retail alcohol license with outdoor service, BPO Elks number 443. E, renewal Class C retail alcohol license with outdoor service, Dixie's Beer Garden. F, approving plan specifications, form of contract and award, Decorah 2025 Hively Street Improvements Project. G, resolution setting public hearing on proposed fiscal year 2026 budget for April 21st. H, Impact Coffee Trivia Night, special event May 1, 2025 through October 9, 2025. I, Nordic Fest special event July 24, 2025 through July 26, 2025. J, Pulpit to Pulpit Charity 5K and 1 Mile Walk, special event July 4th, 2025. K, Iowa Scholastic Mountain Bike League Race, special event May 31st, 2025. L, Warriors on Washington Street Outdoor Yoga special event May 21, 2025 through August 20, 2025. M, Vesterheim Sitten de Mai special event May 16th, 2025. And N, professional service agreement for Hively Street redesign.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Motion made by Olson, second by Whittle. Any further discussion?
Thanks to Randy for bringing up that idea about
Great idea.
Washington Street. I think it's a wonderful, good idea.
Okay, roll call.
Olson,
Aye.
Whittle,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Misselinich,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Motion carried. Do I need to note the next one was taken off the agenda?
Yeah, just state it,
Okay.
and we're postponing it to the May 5th meeting. Yep.
Okay, the update on mitigation banking feasibility will be on May 5th, did you say?
Correct.
Versus today. Okay?
Thank you.
Conduct a public hearing on proposed expansion of 2022 Decorah Business Park Urban Renewal Area. And give a background on that, please.
Yes, so item 9 is the public hearing. 10 is a resolution that's correlating to this, with 11, the first reading of an ordinance. So all three are tied together. This public hearing was set March 3rd meeting for the proposed amendment. P&Z is not required to vote to find in conformance and did not, but must provide comments on conformance within the city's comprehensive plan. So the minutes will be inserted as those comments. There were no attendees at the council meeting consultation meeting that I need to hold with the school and the county. Nobody attended after providing notice. No written comments or objections have been received at this time for the hearing. The plan amendment itself includes extending the existing business park urban renewal area to include all the right-of-ways and streets in the business park, including a possible extension of Centrum Drive to the west from its existing terminus at Millennium, and the right-of-way of Highway 9 from East Ridge Road to Oil Well Road, as well as the site for the new truck country development. The possible projects which also need to be identified in the plan include transportation improvements. That's a big generality, but primarily what we anticipate may come from the DOT is a requirement to signalize the intersection with Millennium and Highway 9. If and when that happens, there are some DOT funds available, but there is going to be cost share with the city, and we're going to need some funds available for that. So by establishing the base before truck country gets developed, that is increment we can tap into for TIF revenues should that trigger a signalized intersection. Because you don't just have traffic lights. With the highway, we'll have turning lanes and other costs associated with that as well. In addition to infrastructure and transportation improvements, we did also identify a possible agreement for economic development services. Primarily what we had talked about was Decorah Jobs as our economic development partner and owner of the property in the business park. Currently, we have a 2080 agreement with them for hotel motel tax revenues. This could be an alternative revenue source in lieu of those hotel motel tax dollars. So it doesn't obligate us to do that, but it gives us an ability.
Okay, is there anyone, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this item? Hearing seen none, I will close the public hearing. Consider resolution to declare necessity and establish an urban renewal area pursuant to section 403.4 of the Code of Iowa and approve urban renewal plan amendment for the 2022 Decorah Business Park Urban Renewal Area.
I'd move for approval.
Second.
Motion made by Chisholm, seconded by Olson. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Jizzle,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Miscelenich,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Whittle,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider an ordinance providing for the division of tax levied on taxable property in the April 2025 addition to the 2022 Business Park Urban Renewal Area pursuant to section 403.19 of the Code of Iowa, first reading.
So I might add, the ordinance, this is the final step essentially in urban renewal. it's the mechanism in which we create the TIF district. So it's the financial layer that we give to the auditor that freezes the base and creates that additional increment moving forward. Again, this, currently, there's no proposed legislation that's going to directly change TIF, but there's some property tax bills that could actually greatly alter the potential collection based on the way the rate structures would look like. Again, don't want to dive too deep into that because those are ifs, but currently the school's Pebble levy, instructional support levy, as well as everyone's debt service levies are exempt from withholding of TIF revenues. So those all still get paid out to the respective taxing entities.
I'd move for approval of the first reading.
Second.
Motion made by Chisel, seconded by Olson for approval of the first reading. Any further discussion?
Is the would the if the if passed, say that they wouldn't get their funding
It would change the potential revenue.
to their disadvantage?
Correct, yes. So, long story short, the proposed bill gets rid of the rollback, caps the revenues. By doing that, what you do is you push down the levy because, well, you've got a revenue cap and now you've got nearly twice the amount of taxable value through elimination of the rollback. What that'll do is push down our levy, especially in the general fund. That's the biggest calculation I've done, from right now is approximately 810 down to in the fives. So, to, everyone here, we're like, oh, it's going to push down our taxes. No, because it gets rid of the rollback as well. So it just pushes down the levy rate, where that really comes into a problem. And this is what we have talked about with our state legislators. Existing TIF agreements. I've already talked with one, and there are potential others that I haven't had a chance to touch base with yet. That tax bill, should those be adopted, they're going to change the revenues associated with the existing tax bills unless amendments are made, or excuse me, with the existing development agreements unless changes are made in those bills.
And they would have to change the bill, not us. Like,
State, correct.
could we, if we wanted to right any unfair problems within our area?
Could we write them?
No, but could we make changes to how they were levied?
The only real change is that, the development agreements have a clause in them that these are subject to annual appropriation. So as it pushes down the levy rate, especially, this is really going to apply mostly to commercial and industrial development agreements that are out there. For example, the VA clinic. As that bill stands, it will lower their tax obligation, but it's also going to reduce their rebate back by the same amount. So the development agreements themselves are going to be different.
Okay, I get it. Yep.
Yeah. So those are the existing ones. The new one, this moving forward, since there's no existing, it's still going to change the possible revenue associated since it's commercial industrial.
Sure. Okay.
I just want to thank Travis and anybody else on the staff who's been working with this to keep us updated on everything that's going on with this and keeping us apprised of how all this operates and connects together. Much appreciated.
Roll call?
Chisel,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Whittle,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
Motion carried. Conduct public hearing approving plans, specifications, form of contract, and award Decorah 2025 chip seal project. You want to explain that, please?
Yeah, so 12 is the public hearing. Item 13, after the public hearing's closed, is the actionable item of council. I'll give the background for both. So this public hearing is required by law based on the engineer's estimated cost of the proposed project, and this hearing was set at the March 3rd meeting. We have not received any comments or objections at this time. The proposed project includes chip seal applications throughout numerous locations in town. Chip seal for Decorah, to our knowledge, has not been anything done for decades, about 30 years or so. This form of chip seal, and we want to be clear about this, it's not one that others within the state of Iowa that have experienced chip seal in Iowa. The DOT here has a different standard for application than Minnesota. These are the Minnesota specifications. So the way this works is the contractor will apply a sealant over top of the aggregate, as opposed to in the Iowa DOT manual, the emulsion goes down first, the aggregate on top, and then there's no sealant or anything put on top. It's also, the aggregate is limestone, as opposed to in Minnesota, it's granite. So what this does, how chip seal works is you open up the traffic flow right after application, get cars and trucks driving on it. That traffic forces the aggregate into the emulsion, and under the Iowa method, it's very dusty. And we did this when I was in Humboldt, and I used to get complaints all the time that, why are you turning city streets into gravel roads? Well, it's short term. About after a month, you then come in, you broom off all the remaining aggregate, and you're left with a chip sealed asphalt street. This method, not the case. You don't have exposed aggregate. It's also a different type of aggregate, so you don't have that fine particulate matter. With that being said, so again, this is the first time the city of Decorah has done chip sealing really in the last 30 plus years. This is also a test run with the Minnesota method, which there's a stretch of Highway 52 between Preston and Harmony that, as you know, if you drive up to Rochester, pay attention. That's the stretch that we've been paying attention to from a staff perspective on its performance. This here will allow us to evaluate this process. So the bid was one sole bid received from Farner Asphalt Sealers out of Wisconsin in the amount of $189,700 and change, which was 20%, 21%, or $32,000 and change over the engineer's estimate. However, the discrepancy is largely due to the price of mobilization, traffic control, and to some degree the HMA partial depth patching more than anticipated. The mobilization and the traffic control were two that we didn't have a fine grasp on what was going to be required, since there are multiple sites throughout the community. And so that might have been part of the issue of why this estimate's over, because the bid is over the estimate, because the chip seal pricing offered, so the emulsion and the actual aggregate, is below what we were estimating for project costs. So that portion of the application, that chip seal portion, came in at roughly nearly an eighth of the equivalent surface area of a 2-inch mill and overlay. Meaning you could do this 8 times before you meet the cost of a 2-inch mill and overlay. Part of this project is actually in conjunction with the Winnebago County for the far north end of Locust Road. So $7,850 would be reimbursed by the county for that 330 feet or so up there. I think that's everything, right, John?
Okay. Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to speak to this item on the agenda? Hearing, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Consider resolution approving plans, specifications, form of contract, and award Decorah 2025 chip seal project.
Motion to approve the resolution for the award of Decorah 2025 chip seal project.
Second.
Motion made by Olson, seconded by Parker. Any further discussion? I'm only going to just briefly note that our former city council person, Ross Hadley, had talked about this quite a bit. So that's just a small note.
So these do provide, they extend the life of the street. So I know some people are gonna, you heard me talk about Locust Road up there. They're gonna say, that street's not that bad. Why are you fixing that as opposed to my street? Well, this chip seal, you heard me talk, it's 1/8 of the cost of a 2-inch mill and overlay. And if we're able to inject that before it degrades to the point that it needs a mill and overlay, we've now bought several more years, 7, 8, 10 years of life to that section of street, which will allow us to catch up and come back and fix your street. Using air quotes. I'm not promising everybody's street.
Any further discussion?
I just want to thank John for the work that he did on this and seeking out alternative options to how we've done it in the past. I like the idea of the granite. Seems more sturdy and has a longer lifespan. That's all.
Roll call?
Olson,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Whittle,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider ordinance to amend section 9.58.020 throwing and shooting, first reading.
So the proposed, I should say ordinance, not resolution. The proposed ordinance is meant to provide differentiation between a city-sponsored program. So, for years, the city has allowed bow hunting of deer in our park system. The city has historically participated in archery programs. The school has done archery programs. But this proposed ordinance is to further delineate versus city-sponsored programs and Joe Q. Citizen going out to Will Baker, shooting across a soccer field a bow and arrow. So that's the intention behind this. Yeah.
Okay, and this is first reading.
Motion to approve the ordinance?
Second.
Motion made by Olson, seconded by Neal. Further discussion?
I think we did get one
We did
person that had reservations about approving this, but I think their fears were more to the idea of it putting people that were using Will Baker Park for family outings and stuff like that at risk. I think where this is situated, way to the far north end of the property there, and with the shooting going into the hillside, I think it alleviates a lot of those fears and problems that might arise from that. So I think it's a good idea.
Might also be worth noting that the archery range itself, the site was inspected by our insurance providers. So there was a lot of thought and rules put into place to make sure that we're operating it safely.
Can you offer more information on the allowed for bow hunting deer in the natural parklands?
Yeah, so, you haven't been with
No.
us during a hunting season, so, I wanna say roughly 8 or 9, maybe. So, an individual interested in bow hunting deer in the park system are able to apply for a license from the city annually. We largely do this to do some form of deer management. I say some form because obviously it's not working. None of my landscaping has held up ever. But we also do it to make sure that it's done in appropriate areas, that they're spaced not just far enough away from trails and things like that, but also each other, right? So that is a program that's currently administered and approved by the park board. So we have that as a standing thing that's been done for years. And honestly, the creation of the archery range is what brought this to attention.
And that is a designated type of bow also, correct?
They can,
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
say just
combo.
bow in
Okay,
general, so.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
like Kirsten, I do want to draw attention that we did have some concerns about safety. I felt like when I went to Will Baker, I really appreciate where it's located, that there's the hillside there, no trails are located on the far end, and there's a clear delineation between the archery range and anything else happening at Will Baker. So, yeah, but I think it's important, and I do, obviously this is a new thing in Decorah, and we need everyone paying attention to the rules, and playing by the rules, so, yeah.
And there is designated fencing.
There's designated fencing, it's clearly marked. I've been a bow hunter for a long time. I think they're pretty respectful in general as a class. They don't want to lose their arrows, so they really do want to go in the targets.
Yeah, don't play catch out there.
Don't like
Okay, roll call?
All right. Olson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Whittle,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Misselinich,
Aye.
Zittergren.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider resolution to approve depository balances. Carrie, you're working on this one, I believe.
Yeah, due to regulations, we have to have a resolution in place on the maximum amount of dollars that we would have in certain banks. Ours was outdated, so this resolution is updating the amounts which I increased. And so this represents the dollar amount, the maximum dollar amount that we could have city dollars in each one of these banks.
I'd move for approval.
Second.
Moved by Chisel, seconded by Neal. Discussion? Roll call?
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Whittle,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Misselinich,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergren.
Consider new police department academy reimbursement contracts. Travis?
Okay, so John was heavily involved in the edits to our existing contract, and Carrie had pointed out some of our outstanding obligations with officers that have left to other employment. We have one individual that I think it's been 3 years paying $100 per month that come the end of year 5, they're going to have a pretty substantial balloon payment because they've only been paying $100 a month. And it's 20, the cost can be upwards of over 20,000 depending on when you leave the city's employment. So the proposed amendment to the existing police department academy reimbursement contract, the intent is to structure the agreement to align with a process that's authorized by the Iowa Administrative Code. It says this or similar. So to make it even stronger, we'd like to recommend council consider this language not similar. So it would propose going from 5 years to 4 for the length of contract. So if I leave in my first year, I owe 100%. If it's 1 to 2 years, then it's 75%, 2 to 3, 50, 3 to 4, 100, or excuse me, 25%. It also increases the minimum monthly payment from $100 to $250, as well as the maximum repayment time, reducing it from 5 years down to 4. In addition, and this is arguably one of the probably the bigger aspects from a city operational standpoint, is that the agreement would allow the city to apply the value of accrued leave that would otherwise be paid to the departing employee, attribute that to the balance due of training costs, and reducing that before, well, it'd be eliminating it before we pay anything out, or it would at least reduce their obligation back and not provide a refund. Proposed changes have been viewed and recommended approval by the Civil Service Commission.
I really
Motion to approve the new reimbursement contract?
Second, and thank you very much for looking into this.
Exactly, really good.
Motion made by Olson, seconded by Neal. Further discussion?
Just say, Kerry was a big proponent of
Right.
this.
Yeah,
Thank you,
no,
Gary.
appreciate you guys doing that.
I do too. Roll call?
Olson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Misselinich,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Whittle.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider 2025 Farmers Market Lease Agreement.
Okay, in recent history, the city's entered into a lease agreement with Decorah's Farmers Market to hold the market in what we commonly refer to as the lower fairway portion of North Alley. The proposed terms remain the same within the agreement from previous years. It states $16 per day with Wednesdays and Saturday mornings. However, the council has adopted Resolution 3272, establishing a public purpose for the farmers market and waiving the lease fee. So we have not collected that for a few years. I know this has come up in conversation in the past. We had the recent conversations around food trucks, and so I did, let's see, I know Josh said he had other commitments. Josh Dan still helps run the farmers market. And so I did kind of prepare him that there might be some conversation around this topic tonight.
I recommend that we approve the lease and adopt, would it be the same resolution number?
You don't have to name the resolution number.
Okay,
It's already
and-
enacted.
And continue to waive the rental price for the public purpose of the market.
I second.
Motion made by Neal, seconded by Whittle to continue as established in previous years. Any further discussion?
I just want to note how important the farmers market is to Decorah. It's one of the best things that we do as a community, and want to support our local small-scale farmers as much as possible because they're all doing great things and care a lot about the work that they do and providing good, healthy local food to all of us. So that's all.
Roll call?
Neal,
Aye.
Whittle,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Misselinich,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen, Chisel.
No.
Motion carried, one abstention.
One no vote, Mayor.
No vote, sorry about that. Memorandum of Understanding between City of Decorah and ASME regarding the addition of Public Works Technician.
Okay, so city staff has been working with ASME for the creation of a public works technician position to include in both the immediate contract and then be applied to the recently approved contract beginning July 1, 2025. The public works technician would have a primary assignment given of either the utilities or streets, would receive the base wage in accordance with the proposed pay matrix, and then see the supplemental pay based on the certifications also included that would be added to their base pay. This is actually how the union contract used to be negotiated. Back, I believe 2017 was the last rendition that had this similar structure to it. While having a primary assignment, the city does retain the ability to reassign based on need across the streets, water, and wastewater treatment plant departments. So while they would have a primary assignment, our departments do work very well currently to help out other departments when needed and when asked. But this is different where this we can make the ask, but this would also, we can provide the directive. This also gives our public works technician, instead of a street operator position, they are capped based on their pay matrix. They have no ability to really get additional certifications to better themselves. Not better themselves. That that's not what I intended. They can't advance themselves pay-wise, short of the pay matrix itself. And so this will give incentives to go out, get these additional certifications, which then we can use with the other departments at the water department or wastewater treatment plant. The intentions of this, it would also allow us to extend our roster for on-call weekend rotations. Right now, I believe that's 5. Yep, so that's 5 currently. This would, again, once you get those certifications trained, we can extend that list as well. The union has approved this MOU, and should the council approve this MOU, an advertisement for 2 public works technician positions would go out. Now, these are open existing staff positions that used to be a utility operator and a street operator role. So these are not additional staff we are creating. These are 2 vacant positions that we've been evaluating for the better part of 6 months. So these are not new positions. I want to be clear about that. Existing staff would have the ability to apply for the role and possibly convert to the public works technician if desired and if hired for the role. But the move, and they would move to the pay matrix that most closely resembles their current pay without losing pay. I want to be clear, this is a voluntary, they would have to apply and be hired for it. We're not forcing any employees to this role. That's their own choosing.
I make a motion to pass the memorandum of understanding between the City of Decorah and AFSCME regarding the addition of public works technician.
Second.
Motion made by Neal, seconded by Parker. Discussion? I appreciate the hard work done on this.
Yeah, some of these, a number of items on tonight's agenda and a number of items on any agenda take a whole lot more background work than one might expect. And so at the end of the day, actually, there's value for everyone in this public works technician.
I just know that there were a lot of discussions about it.
A lot of
which
discussions.
I appreciate all the people that were involved with that.
I think our entire move towards the public works model, I mean, since my time on council, has been incredible. And so I really do want to thank staff for all of their thought. I think it's saving taxpayers money. I think it's helping the city operate more efficiently. I've been really impressed with how it's running. So thank you for continuing to push that.
Agreed.
Echo what Emily had to say, as well as I think a lot of it has to do with the quality of the staff that we have that makes it work that well. So appreciate all of the hard work you guys do.
And I also do want to, my comment on it is, obviously appreciating you look at the structure of that, and sometimes you rush yourself into something because you are short-staffed, essentially with 2 people for 6 months. So, all the other staff that took on that extra work because you were short-staffed to make the appropriate decisions. Grateful.
Thanks, Brent. That's good.
Roll call?
Neal,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Chisel, Whittle.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider resolution assigning accessible parking on Winnebago Street. Can you give some background on that? It's exactly where that parking place is?
Yes. Excuse me, so it's on the southwest quadrant of the intersection of Winnebago Street and Main. Southeast. I did it again.
It's southeast.
It is the southeast quadrant of Winnebago. It's adjacent to the library. Yes, southeast quadrant, and it's the northernmost parking stall. Staff's evaluated the parking in that area. We are recommending this be adopted as an City Code Section 10A4.020 requires designation of parking places that city council from time to time establish special parking places by means of resolutions of the council, setting aside special parking places designated only for parking motor vehicles displaying the accessible parking tag.
Motion to approve the accessible parking on Winnebago Street.
Second.
Motion made by Olson, second by Neal. Further discussion?
I have one question further up, get my directions so I'm not east-west challenged.
It's okay, you get 2 attempts.
To the north, by the old Donlands, there were 2 handicap spots and then one across the way. Has there been any discussion as the nature of that block has changed of removing one or so there to open up more parking then for the businesses that are there?
Yeah.
Or is
John, you're nodding along that I know we've been evaluating a couple of areas. Is that one of them? Sure, go for it. You drive.
So, you're right, Randy. There was 2 by the Donlin side and 1 across the other side by the cardboard robot.
Hacker Nelson.
The alley
Yeah.
there, right? The one, I don't know the history exactly of the second one that was added when Donlin's Drugs was there, but I think it was there for pickup of prescriptions and so on like that. It was half in the alley.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
that one, we've already eliminated that one
Okay.
when they started renovating the building for other purposes and so on like that. So the number of handicap accessible parking stalls in that block is meets the warrant that the ProAg and American with Disabilities Act calls for number of parking stalls.
Okay, so we got 2.
2. Yep, and in fact, because Water Street has a slope to it that is exceeds 2%, in that section, Water Street isn't really set up for accessible parking. So wrapping around the corner, they make use of those, the number of parking stalls make use of those 2 stalls there as well.
Okay. All right.
So
Thank
I
you.
will take this opportunity to also interject, because I'm sure we'll get a phone call or 2 tomorrow saying, I want a handicap parking stall in front of my business. Not all, as you just heard John point out, the conditions of the street also help dictate whether you can even do that and designate it or not. So a couple things be considered, the slope that you heard. In addition, you need to have it nearest an ADA accessible crosswalk. If you don't, if you try and do it mid-block, you've got to do curb modifications as well as van accessible, so you lose not just one parking stall to that designation, but the adjacent stall as well. So there's a lot of considerations that go into it, not just simply painting blue square on the street.
Okay. Roll call?
Olson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Zittergruen, Chisel,
Aye.
Whittle,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
Motion carried. Professional service agreement for street light design. Going to give a fill in on that one, please?
Yeah, so I might ask John to help me chime in here. John's been running some numbers here this afternoon based on information we got back from Alliant on trying to calculate this. Do want to also preface that while the lead time on polls, street polls, is about 6 months, we don't necessarily have to have council decision finalized at the end of this discussion tonight. There is a little bit of time, but in addition to, so largely the purchasing policy with the city of Decorah allows for myself as the city manager to enter into this agreement since the billable hours do not exceed 9,500. But that's what we need is council's discussion on whether we make the polls city-owned or Alliant-owned. So if owned by the city, initially pressed, Alliant there's 2 meters on the end, opposite ends of the Hively Street project that we wanted to tie into. There was some pushback from Alliance that you can't extend them that far. We don't believe that to be actually the case. So if we take into consideration a tying into an existing meter set, I'm going to use the dollar amount for this because this is the lowest operational cost that using current dollars, that using today's dollars, what we will pay over the course of 50 years, assuming a 50-year lifespan. And this is where John's going to get ready to jump in. So each light, there's 6 proposed lights. We believe going to be 6 lights within this stretch. If each light is consuming less than $1, or roughly $1 per light fixture per month, that's roughly $76 for the year. I'm stalling while John's getting his paper out so he can confirm as I'm going through this.
This is if you-
$76 a year in electricity costs for the pole. Or
and
for the
putting
light.
it in a meter that's already there.
Putting on a meter that's already there.
Yep.
We've got the estimated from Erdman at this point, the estimated cost for we've got the estimated design cost, $9,500, but the estimated construction costs are roughly $115,000 for poles, conduit, and bases. Everything $115,000 for construction. At $76 per year, over 50 years, plus the initial $115,000 for construction costs, plus $9,500 for design costs, plus within that 50 years, we're going to have to replace the LED light heads 6 times? No, 5. Once every 10 years. And that, John, can you remind me the costs? There we go. I was giving you plenty of advance warning.
Yeah. Chest up.
But I didn't know we could dictate when one chin only.
We love you coming up and talking to us.
Yeah. So anyway, we got some cost numbers for the electricity, and if you look at the just strict electricity cost, you're paying wood for those 6 lights. You're paying about $76 per year if you run it through the existing meters, not including the meter charges there. If you were to look at the Alliance monthly charge for the lights and for the pole times 6, you're looking at about $2,800 or so. The net difference in cost annually is about $2,800. But if you look at the time value of money and you apply that as an annual amount, bring it back to the present day value, then your construction cost and your replacement cost, if the city was to own it, your dollars behind over that 50-year time span right now in the vicinity of $70,000. So it's less expensive for Alliant to own the lights based on the preliminary numbers that I put together right here. And what I need to do is I need to verify that Alliant would, whether or not they charge an upfront cost for the installation. That's a big factor in it, whether or not, because $115,000 was estimated by Erdman Engineering last winter for what this would cost. We'll revisit that a little bit, and then also make sure we understand whether or not Alliant charges the city for the installation cost. And so what we'd be doing is looking at trying to revisit what they did on Locust Road, because they designed and installed that lighting system there. And I don't have that answer for you right now. That's where Travis kind of prefaced this by saying that we don't need to have a formal decision on this right now, but I am setting the table because there are costs and we want to understand what those are. Does that do it justice,
and
Travis?
so along those lines, with the franchise agreement, it talks about if the city moves a street, that it's Alliance cost to be borne to relocate utilities. And the question here is, it's not necessarily associated with just the street. There is some, there are some that are on the north side. They're primarily all on the south is where we would expect. But there are some on the north, right, John? Or am
No,
I
we would be
backwards?
putting most of the lights on the north so they would illuminate the bike path, the bikeway, and the street.
And that's where, because it's the bike, pedestrian, shared use path, it's not a street moving. So we're trying to get confirmation on whether that's gonna trigger their cost, or is it are we gonna have some kind of cost associated with their installation?
So-
Again, we
So
didn't
we-
wanna,
Be better off tabling this until we have hard numbers.
so you can table it, or you can enter in an agreement. Largely, it was meant to just facilitate the conversation. This was meant to be the conduit. See what I did there? Conduit for the conversation of whether we own them or the city or Alliant does.
I think it's hard without some of this data to know whether or not we should own them or not. I want to throw one idea out there. If we, acquiring the land here now, thinking about redoing this facility, one question I do have is this would be a prime spot for some solar that maybe we could put up without connecting it with Alliant, and could we use that solar then to power those lines if we owned them?
So I have actually talked with, I believe her name's Abby Steffens. I believe she's a SETI employee, Clean Energy Districts of Iowa. That EECBG grant that the city served as the applicant, we are a conduit for that 10-county grant north of $1 million that was awarded. I've been talking with them about the city possibly being a customer, evaluating just that for this building with the recent addition of additional property, even if it's not, regardless of this building and the future of this building, but what are the realities behind a solar installation? Because we can't, my understanding is we can't do it on the roof here. We don't know that there's the structural stability, just purely from a design standpoint, not saying the roof is structurally deficient, that it can't hold. We just don't know. But anyway, yes, we are exploring the possibility of solar installation, but it was focused around tying it into the utilities of this building.
But if it was here, I mean, it would be interesting to think about the water infrastructure we have and the lights and trying to get as much onto a solar field as we could, right? I mean, we could put a solar field over the parking lot that,
You can, but part of that requirement is it all has to be behind the same meter. So you'd have to run, let's say it's for our well houses and stuff back here, you'd have to make sure that you've got your meter, and then everything has to be looped in behind it, including the solar array.
but any new infrastructure we did, we could put behind a meter. So if the lights, if we build out here, and if we add lights out there, all of that could be behind a meter. I mean, that's what Luther does with their solar field on 52 is behind a meter. There is no, that is essentially a direct feed to Regents.
Yeah, what I'm saying is if we did this installation of lighting, street lighting, and you wanted to tie it in, we would have to essentially have that street lighting tied into the electrical at this building to all be behind the same meter to enjoy the benefits of a solar array back here. Otherwise, it'd have to be behind the meter of just the streetlights or
Right.
just the well houses back there. So you'd have to have them all behind the same meter.
I think given
Emily,
that,
Just a couple things. I got a 6-month lead time on the streetlights, and this property thing is gonna take a longer time to decide that. So if you're thinking about a solar array back there, and the minimal amount of electricity that's required to power those lights, it might be worthwhile considering that as a separate project for when this building occurs and you're able to tie it into just this building right here.
and so, well, what I'm wondering is if we don't wind up having to pay them for those lights, right? And Alliance says we're gonna move them and charge you, that makes a ton of sense. But if we have to pay for those lights regardless, there might be some advantages in us owning them.
I think there's a large investment that would have to get put into a solar field there with design and materials and so on like that. For the amount of electricity that $75 per year, I don't know, the math balances out for that particular installation. You'd probably receive more benefit if it's just tied in strictly to a building like this. I understand where you're coming from and trying to tie it all together, but time is not our friend when we're coming to do that. And the distance from there, wrapping it back around there without having additional transformers to step down the electricity would be a challenge.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. All I'm saying is if two things are, if things go our way, that's great. But if we have to add another meter and we get meter charged, then it's not $75 a month, right? So if they don't let us put these lights on an existing meter, we will then have a meter charge as well.
So the meter charge would, if we had to pay for meters, that would make it more expensive for what the city side of things, and tip the balance even further toward the Alliant thing, because they don't charge the meters with their rental fees for the lights and for the poles.
And we wouldn't have to pay it, but we'd have to pay a separate meter fee on those lights every month.
If the city was to own them, correct?
If the city owned them and we had to do a separate meter installation, if we were not able to tie into one or both of the existing meters on either end, we would have that meter charge and then the electricity costs associated.
We can take
With
it
the
offline,
city
but
owning
what I'm
them.
saying is, I think if you have multiple meters with Alliant, though, you pay every meter.
No, with Alliant, they charge per light. They have a set fee.
So you're both right. There are multiple ways that these are billed. One is if it's behind a meter, then it's the meter charge and the electricity costs. We also have the non-metered. Actually, there's multiple non-meters. There's non-metered on an Alliant pole, non-metered on a city-owned pole, non-metered on a Alliant pole where the city owns the light, and non-metered on an Alliant pole where the city doesn't own the light. So there are multiple rate structures but we're focusing on essentially one of three. Either metered with tying into the existing, either city-owned poles or Alliant, or non-metered city-owned pole versus Alliant. So I guess that is 4.
Clear as mud?
Well, we just don't know what they're gonna let us do. So I
No.
think we should find out what they're gonna let us do first.
Which goes back to Randy's suggestion as far as tabling it until,
I'd feel more comfortable if I could see hard numbers for either proposal.
When do we need a decision on this by, John? I mean, like yesterday, or?
We'd probably come back at the next council meeting.
Okay.
And at the very latest, it'd probably May 5th.
Okay.
I hear where you're at as far as trying to see where things are at, so we want to get the numbers right too. And that's why we're not trying to roll things out from my end too quickly.
That's why I prefaced that we don't need to have a decision made right now.
Okay.
We've got a little bit of time.
Well, we should make sure that we get it on the agenda, either the next one or definitely by May 5th.
Is it possible to have the numbers from Alliant and hard numbers for us by April
Yeah.
21st?
I put together something here, but
He didn't want me to make copies of that. He didn't think it-
That's okay.
No, that's fine. I mean, I would, like I said, I would rather see a comparison table of the two side by side.
Yep.
And then make my decision off that.
and that's, I think, definitely a very valid request.
So,
I would move to table this until April 21st, and please bring back the two comparisons.
Second.
motion made by Chisel, seconded by Olson to table until April 21st. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Chisel,
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
I think it was that. Zittergrun,
Aye.
Whittle,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich.
Aye.
Motion carried. Professional service agreement for Hively Street staking?
Okay, so this proposed service agreement, it is above 10,000, so it requires council approval. This is roughly, well, if we were to propose a contract for all of the construction staking associated with Hively, it'd be roughly 40,000. So this is, these billable not to exceed 20 are to assist our staff will internally do the water and the sewer and assist for some of the sidewalk. But this professional service agreement would be primarily for street staking, the shared use path staking. And again, that's roughly half of the dollar value that the staking would actually be out there.
Motion to approve the service agreement for Highway Street staking?
Second.
Motion made by Olson, seconded by Whittle. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call.
Olson,
Aye.
Whittle,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Miscelinich,
Aye.
Zittergren.
Aye.
Discussion and possible action on Hively Street and River Street intersection and requests for qualifications.
Okay, so this agenda item is a discussion and possible action, so action is possible, but not necessarily needed. So during the March 31st work session, council discussed the Hively Street and River Street / Claiborne Drive intersection, primarily whether the construction of a standard four-way stop intersection or a 100-foot inscribed traffic circle. During that work session, it was noted that staff was attempting to complete the design of Hively Street Phase 2, which we described being the end of Phase 1, essentially out front, the driveway here, moving east through the intersection and going as far east as the dollar would allow, with the target getting past Court Street and the proposed new driveway of the new middle school. So that way the construction would happen during the same time with the school and that section of Hively Street. During that discussion, it was brought up the possibility of financing the rest of Hively Street all the way to state to ensure that enough funding was available to complete that construction of the entire stretch during the school's construction. So if council does wish to pursue that, one of the reasons we said and possible action regarding a request for qualifications is that additional design we're not going to be able to handle internally the design of roughly twice the length of the project. So we would recommend issuing a request for qualifications if the council wants to have the design of all the way up to State Street done. So there's kind of two things at play
Yeah,
here.
so you're looking for-
One, do you want to go the full stretch, or do you want to work within our existing and just have that target be we go as far east as our budget allows? And then secondly, if it's, we want to, if it is going all the way to state, it's going to be extremely, like, I don't want to stress how extremely difficult it would be for staff, internal staff, to create bid documents in a timely fashion to get these out and bid in a December, January timeline where we want to have them out to bid. We're again going to be behind that 8 ball.
Just for
Oh, I also
clarification.
forgot the intersection.
Yeah, I was gonna
I
say,
was gonna
you
say-
you
That
want
was
to,
the other part. After that,
Hey,
so
just-
what's the most helpful? Oh, sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, just for clarification, is this for phase 2, where it would be from phase 2 going all the way to state, or just way we have talked about doing?
correct. So
Okay, thank
that's
you.
one part is, does phase 2 go all the way
Okay.
to state, or does it stop within our budget and our internal staff time and ability? I want to stress it's more time than ability to do the design in-house. And then it's, is it a traffic circle or is it a traditional 4-way?
So then does it really just become one phase and we're just doing Hively?
No, it's 2 phases.
Right, I mean, if we go from
It's
college.
still 2 phases. but-
Okay,
Yeah.
so it'd be still over 2 years, just one is happening while the school's constructing and we're doing Hively now.
Right, because the one,
Okay.
right now, we've got phase 1, which was just awarded.
Yeah.
And then next year, we'd be designing for next year's phase 2. And the question is phase 2 go all the way to state, and when it's a 2-phase project? Or is there a 3rd phase for the following year? Maybe that's better how to frame it.
Yeah.
Would you
yeah,
not have to know what type of intersection you're going to have?
Yes.
That's part of it too, yes.
We have to know the intersection for
Two
phase
things.
1 and for phase 2,
Yeah,
right? You want
either
the,
way, we have
we
to
need to
make that
figure out the
decision.
intersection.
Right.
Let's do those conversations one at a time. There's no reason to do them both together. That's my preference.
So you do the intersection.
Intersection first.
Your
let's-
pick, Mayor. Yeah, your pick.
Well, we
I-
kind of
we-
got up
let-
to the intersection.
Travis, do you want to hear the intersection first? Should we
Go
talk
for
about
it.
that first?
Intersection.
Oh, really? I was gonna do the easier thing first. Can we do
Yeah,
the-
I agree.
I guess I would say, in my mind, we should do what, to me, is the easier decision, which is, I say we do the rest of Hively while the school is going on. So we do it in 2 phases, not 3. That would be my,
So you wanted to go all the way to State Street
yeah,
currently? Or-
Well, in phase
right-
2.
Right,
in phase 2. And that we would hire outside counsel in order to get it done.
even though it's going to put more of a burden on staff to get that.
No, I think it's putting less of a burden on them. They were not gonna do it.
Be- Because in conjunction with that, you would say, yes, do an
Yes.
RFQ to go out for design, correct?
Yes, I was trying to think it would
Okay.
lessen staff, correct me if I'm wrong, this would lessen your burden if we said, let's do it in 2 phases and we're gonna hire someone else to do this outside phase.
It would allow staff to focus on other existing projects at hand.
Yeah.
And not have,
Okay.
because keep in mind, we do a lot of our own construction administration and inspections.
Yep.
And so we're already contracting out construction staking as part of the Hively project as well. This would take John and the design element off of John, put it in a consultant's hands as a result.
Okay.
So in my mind, there's 2 priorities that I see in doing this. One is alleviate the pressure on staff time. 2 is that I think it's important that we try to get this area done when the school is done, so we don't keep disrupting flow through the downtown area and through the school area, so it makes sense to get it done. And I think I have been forthcoming, and I think if we go for a bond for this building, we should actually just put the street project on there and make that commitment to get this area.
How about if we work with the design of the intersection first?
Oh, okay. That to me is harder, but
Okay.
sure.
And we talked about that at the work session, which
We-
we were.
we did talk about it.
We
We-
only talked about, what the design, the potential of what the 2 could be.
No, I get that. I just don't think there's going to be, I think there's going to be some disagreement here. I thought we could start with what we might agree on.
Yeah. I think there'll be consensus on your idea of going all the way to State Street on that one, but.
Do
Yeah.
we have a sense of what the outside firm, I mean, are we talking 10 to 50,000, 100 to 200,000? Any idea?
So that's, interestingly enough, state law has changed in recent years. We actually cannot evaluate RFQs anymore based on their proposed rates. But the way it works now, the RFQ process, you have to rank, start negotiations with the first. You don't have to enter into an agreement with them, but if you fail to reach an agreeable price, you can move on to 2,
I
then
see.
on to 3. So overall project, John, I'm gonna look at you. Any ballpark idea for full stretch of Hively design? Mhm. Mhm. So for those listening at home, that's one, if we use an estimated construction cost of 1.5 million, realistically 300,000 or so in consulting would be approximate.
So not 1.5 for the consultant. Yeah.
And I mean, 300K is not the marginal cost of this, potentially, because there would be, we'd incur those costs mostly through other outside engineering if we were to do this in 2 years. Am I understanding that right? Are we only moving up the schedule for 300K? I mean, we're getting more than that, right?
And more of it designed, correct. So
Yeah.
we're moving up the schedule, getting more of it designed out of house as opposed to in. So it's gonna free up our staff time for, quite frankly, our existing workload. As well as, not that we're not gonna have many funds available for fiscal '27 street projects, but there's gonna be some smaller design work that staff would be focused on.
When is the school planning on starting their construction?
My understanding is they expect to have base prep started August.
When do they have their design out for the public?
It's a great question.
Secret.
Yeah.
So 18 months after they start prep work, is that what their timeline is still?
August of 27
5?
is when they expect to be open.
Okay.
Yep.
So if we do this section of Hively this year, the intersection next summer, and then finish up the rest of Hively the following summer in '27, we would still be within their construction window by keeping it all in-house.
Typically, our construction seasons run through November. And so if we tried to bid this for like a second phase and catch,
If we went from Court to River.
as long as we get past Court Street and where their proposed entrance is gonna be, which, we're working off preliminary estimates right now. As long as we can get halfway through, they'll have access from the west end, from Claiborne River, Hively intersection, into their driveway, do the loop, and have to come back out west, back to the intersection. It is August the 26th? Okay. Is that what I have? Yeah. All right. Yeah, sorry. August the 26th.
You're from August, so basically 12 months.
Is that right, John?
So if that's the
Google?
case, then
Wow, that's really stepped up from
Yep.
when they initially talked about it, because they were talking a minimum of 18 months.
it'd be really nice to see those drawings.
Yeah. Well, I know they talked about, the last conversation we were a part of was base work starting in August. I believe they wanted to wait till Nordic Fest. Base prep started in August, building in December.
Okay. Do we want to switch the intersection? Are we good trying to figure out I know you wanted to do that, but like I said, I think it's just going to be easier to do the easy part first.
it seems like we've already been talking about the taking this out of the house, right? Like that's what we should focus on, right? That's what we're talking about? Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I will make a plug. I think we have to take something out of our house. We have too much in-house, and we have a lot of projects going on. It feels like if you look at the 4 quadrants of important and urgent, that is growing. And I do think the school is important, this road is important and urgent, and we need to be honest with what we can do.
I'm going to agree with Emily. I think, you know, if we can, if we could swing it and just have all of Hively Street to state, I think that's probably the best way to go. Me personally, Hively Street, that far end needs a lot of work, and probably, in my personal opinion, probably more work than the other side we're starting with. So just because of the congestion and just the design of it. So having that done sooner than later would be, I think, hugely beneficial.
I think that we probably all agree that we want to find ways to make the burdens on staff more accomplishable. And, you know, I just want to make sure this is the best way to go about doing that. Like, is this the best thing to change the timeline on? I think the pros of changing the timeline are that we can make construction coincide with the build out of the school, and it would certainly be nice to have it all done together. And we can't do that if we try to do it in-house. I just don't, you know, that's pretty obvious. So it seems to me like what staff are proposing is, in exchange for $300,000, we take a lot off of our engineering team's plate and we advance the construction schedule to make more sense for the school. That's the proposal. And Travis, am I right that this is something you'd like to see us do? And I know that I say 300,000, but obviously we don't have a number yet. I get
correct.
that.
But we need to operate under some kind of assumption, right?
Right. Because I'm concerned that this only eases the burden on our engineering staff and not our administrative staff. That's one concern I have about this. I want to find ways to take things off of administrative staff's plate as well. And so I want to talk about, you know, alternatives for that as well. There's just too many big projects for a city with our capacity currently ongoing. And I'd like, you know, I think that this is one good approach. I just want to make sure that we're not just saying, Travis, congrats, now you're managing more engineers. You know, that's not what we're shooting for.
John's
good point,
enough
Steve.
for me. I don't need any
No,
more.
I appreciate that.
But, no, I appreciate that. And it really is, what I also might add to is the $300,000 or whatever it might be. It advances the construction one time. It does free up engineering staff for other smaller internal design elements, whether it's street projects or, you know, even like sidewalk projects, things like that. It's really going to be, is it worth the additional cost to get the full swath done in one time to benefit? I don't want to say to benefit the school. I'll fully acknowledge that if we do it over 2 years, you're essentially shutting down that street in some sense for 2 years. You're one way in, one way out. Is that worth $300,000? That's a tough call. I'm trying not to dabble in the city council realm. And
So,
think-
if I can just ask a different question. John, I think I'm right to assume that if we were to outsource the second phase of this phase of this project, it's not like you're worried that there wouldn't be enough work for you all to be doing in 2026 and 7, right? I mean, there's plenty. It seems like there's lots to do. Is that fair to say? It's like this is needed work, whether it happens in-house or out of house. We're going to have to pay for it.
right.
And I think we should remember that this is not new money we're spending. We're going to either spend it by having to hire someone else to do the stuff that the engineers would be doing next year otherwise. This way, we can wrap it into capital costs, which gives us some more options with regard to financing, with regard to where we can fund it from in terms of road costs.
I mean, that was some of my thought,
Yeah.
right? Is why I was saying I'd like to be able to lump it together. I really appreciate you bringing that up, right? I mean, I think in this discussion and in the next one, it is about trying to find some balance with what staff is being asked to do in the next 3 to 5 years, even 1 to 2 years.
Oh my
right?
God, this is going to continue for 3 to 5 years?
No.
Oh,
Sorry.
thank you.
Okay, sorry. Now, next 2 years, right? Next 2 years. And trying to find ways to finance and partner projects together, I think, is one of those things. But if it's not going to alleviate the pressure that staff and administration is feeling, then it probably isn't maybe as worth it as I'm thinking that it is.
Well, I will say it will alleviate, especially the pressure on getting it out to bid at a desired time. That's the hard part that we haven't been able to quite get there yet. We're always playing catch up. And when we talked about the conversion of the public works model, council probably remembers me saying this, and hopefully John doesn't take great offense, but when Jeremy Burrell left as the city engineer, what I said was, I need a city engineer that's in a back room with a computer and no phone to answer. See, John's smiling. He likes that idea. That he can work on engineering things, that he can focus on the drafting to do these projects in-house and yield a better return for taxpayer dollars, quite frankly. We're getting better at that, but we're still playing catch up. You know, the phone still rings, the emails still go to John. Largely what I'm getting at is this would allow for us to hire a consulting firm that they're not answering Joe Q citizens' phone calls. They're doing the work for us in that room without a phone in front of a computer to make sure we hit a December 1 bid date. That's where I see, honestly, probably the biggest potential return is we're going to catch a better bid date time. I'm looking to see if John nods along. He's not along. All right. As well as if we do the full stretch, there's economies of scale there to be had. Not great, but some. So if we're looking at mobilizations, always, I mean, we talked about mobilization in the prior project. That's the one-time fixed costs associated with the project. That's where the contractors put their overhead and stuff in there. So if we're able to avoid that mobilization ×2, and maybe instead it's ×1.5, traffic control instead of ×2, it's actually only ×1 because they're closing on both ends of the street. Like, there are efficiencies to be gained on the construction side by doing it at one swath that can bring down also that potential cost for consulting.
So I think I'm going to speak in favor of this. I think that we ought to submit the RFQ. We can always decide that the prices come back too high. And I think that's important to remember.
Yep.
And I think that there's a lot of benefits to it. I think we need to remember it wouldn't be wasted money. This doesn't mean our engineers are going to go on vacation for the next year. They're going to have other important work to do. The other things we need to remember, it's hard to estimate the economic cost of significantly closing down Hively for a year in addition to what we absolutely need to do. But I bet it's a lot more than we expect. If you did the math on that, I bet it's a lot more than you think. And as a little thought experiment that I came up with, it like what would I pay to not have Hively closed for an additional summer personally? Well, it's not nothing. I'd easily throw $30 in there. You start multiplying that by everyone who uses that street. I think this actually seems like a pretty good deal when you spread it out over the tens of thousands of people who use Hively to prevent a second year of closure. That said, it's not nothing we're spending. It's also not what the RFQ comes back as. We're not, again, throwing the money in the garbage can. It's going to higher engineering, freeing up our engineers to do something else. So I'm going to be in favor of submitting the RFQ and probably in favor of working with one of the respondents But I don't want this to be the end of the how do we reduce the administrative burden conversation, because I don't just want to bring on engineering help. I want to make sure that what we're doing is possible for our staff. And if that means hiring outside help to help with project management or administration, I think we should look at that too. Or we should consider prioritizing which projects that we have going this year that maybe we need to put on the back burner. So that's kind of where I'm at, but I'm in favor of the RFQ.
Totally well said.
I am as well. I think from an efficiency standpoint, it makes sense to get the entire project done when we can, as well as freeing up staff to do the projects we've already tasked them to do and stuff like that. So I'm definitely on board with this as well.
Same here. Everything's been stated really well. I'm also in favor.
There's one other thing. This is an extremely complicated project involving a lot of modes of traffic working together right at the center of our town, involving a lot of schools. I think we have great engineering staff here, but it never hurts to have additional eyes on a project with this much complexity. So I think it'd be good to bring in those perspectives.
You can make a motion.
Oh,
Do you want a motion for this?
do you want a motion?
If we make a motion, can we keep going with additional conversation on the same agenda item? You good with that? Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I move that we issue the RF. Oh, actually, can I
Sure.
I have one more piece of discussion.
Okay.
I read the RFQ with interest, and I'm curious, John, Travis, how important is it that, like, you know, there are project goals, right? The objective of this project is to improve traffic flow, enhance pedestrian safety, replace aging public utilities. Without rehaving conversations we've all had, I would order those priorities differently. Does that make sense? How important is it that this reflects where the council wants it to be?
Yeah, I wouldn't view those necessarily in an order
Right.
of sequence as much as these all need to be addressed by whoever the respondent is going to be. So even after a respondent, it's basically giving the respondents criteria on how they're going to be evaluated.
Okay.
So they need, the expectation is you are a consulting firm that can evaluate all those goals.
So personally, I would like to see it not just enhancing pedestrian safety, but encouraging multimodal transportation, right? Those are two different things, you know. One way to enhance pedestrian safety is to make sure they never go anywhere. And I'd like to, you know what I'm saying? Like, honestly. So I guess as long as staff is fairly certain that we're not locking ourselves into one particular model of engineering with this, I'm happy, then I move the RFQ as presented.
Can we just add that into the RFQ? Can we just add in multimodal
Sure.
transportation?
I will withdraw my motion and move the RFQ with the addition of encouraging multimodal transportation in the project goals.
Second.
Motion made by Zidekun.
Thanks for the
Zidekun, with the changes as noted, and second by Olson. Any further discussion?
Is this also going to include the intersection?
Yeah, he said we could come
Correct.
back
It
and
But
will
we're
include
gonna do that
and have a
next.
discussion of that after.
Okay.
We'll tell them which one.
Roll,
Correct.
roll call? Oh, sorry. Roll call?
Sittergruen?
Aye.
Olson?
Aye.
Chisel?
Aye.
Whittle?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Parker?
Aye.
Miscelenage?
Aye.
Motion carried, and then we want to talk about the second subject.
Correct. So now it's what type of intersection, there is another, I mean, it's up to council, but if council's already reached a determinant, it's gonna speed up this process, but if council still wants, we can bring on a consulting firm first.
You mean for the intersection?
Correct, if you want. I'm not saying that that's a path I'd recommend. If we're able to provide, if we can give clearer direction on what our intentions are in the area and pick one now, if we are at that point, I would pick one now.
Okay.
But as a point, with council issuing the RFQ, that in itself has bought us additional time to make a hard and fast decision.
Before we bring on.
Correct, but again, I want to stress, if council is at a point that you are confident in a decision and a path you want to take, that we want to take, that's why we have it in red in the RFQ, is the intent was we would identify which one we want in their response. Again, that's so they, as a respondent, know, hey, I'm going to be designing a traditional four-way intersection as part of this project. I need to highlight traditional four-way intersections nearest to school. Or if it's a roundabout, they're gonna highlight types of roundabout intersections they've done adjacent to schools. So it gives them better guidance and helps us evaluate.
Well, we've had a lengthy discussion already, and you've had some time to think about what type of an intersection between the two. Maybe that's a place to start.
I'm supportive of the roundabout. I did a little talking to some folks who have had some experience building them or looking at them in school areas. There's some in Iowa City, there's some in Northfield. I think they do enhance traffic flow and provide pedestrian safety across them. We might need to do some training, but I also think the majority of kids in that location won't be crossing there. I think they would actually cross where they still cross. Obviously, we haven't seen a school design, so that's hard. But it does seem like if that's the bus drop-off zone, which is what they have always said it would be, and the front doors to the school are further down, it makes a lot of sense to me that they're going to be on the path walking down and crossing where that is. So I think in terms of traffic flow, pedestrian safety, but also the greening of the space, I am for the roundabout, as long as it holds true that it is the same price. Because that was always going to be my sticking point, was the price. The cost of it. As long as the cost is a wash,
Okay.
then I am very much in favor of the roundabout.
I'm also in favor. I trust the considerations that have been made in terms of safety and price, and I know that it'll be, we'll be hearing gripes about traffic circle initially because it's something new and particularly older drivers are not used to, but I think not having to pay for the stoplights and just the flow of traffic without people having to stop at the intersection each time, I think will just make flow of traffic much smoother. So yeah, I also supportive of the roundabout.
I'm supportive of the four-way as presented by John at our work session. By narrowing that up makes it a much safer looking intersection on paper. Also adds a lot of green space along the edge by taking the parking out and the turning lanes. And then I'm thinking also in the wintertime, the cleanability for our street department. It's a lot easier to plow in straight lines than in circles. And also with the medians would have to be cleaned by hand, so that's much more additional maintenance. It just looks a lot cleaner, and I really like John's design there where he narrowed it up and added boulevard and sidewalk.
Yeah, I spent a fair amount of time this last week reading about, retrofitting current intersections with roundabouts. Many roundabouts deployed in the United States are part of greenfield construction. It's less common for roundabouts to be introduced into areas where there's currently intersections like there are in the study area that we're talking about. And it creates a different set of challenges, and I think that John has really helped us by showing us versions of how a roundabout could address some of the concerns and how a traditional intersection could address some of the concerns. Looking at both of them, I feel as if that they both would create marked safety improvements, and I think that they're both pretty good options. Given that, I prefer the traditional intersection design. I was so impressed by how it looked when John was presented it as de-skewed, where the angles mostly hit each other at closer to 90 degrees. I share, like in a vacuum, if I thought that this would be a much safer intersection, I would fight for it. If I thought that, it would be cheaper or the same price, I'd be like, let's do it. Let's do the unpopular thing. But I don't think there's enough benefits to justify embracing some of the downsides and some of the sort of the the negativity associated with a change like this. If it were a dramatically positive, like obviously good decision for the city, I'd say, yeah, let's lead here. Let's do something that might not be universally popular. But I think that I think we have two good options, and so we should stick with the one that we know how to maintain, we know how to use, doesn't require pedestrians to go as far out of their way to use a street near a school, and probably going to be cheaper. So that's where I'm at. I think we should stick with the traditional. Last thing though is if our engineering firm, if we do an RFQ and we end up working with an outside firm, and they call us like on day 2, like, hey, did you consider a roundabout for this? Maybe it'd be worth a conversation again. But if they seem to think it's a fine solution, I'd like to go in that direction.
I have a question, Steve, that you bring up. I guess I've only heard people who want a roundabout. So I'm curious, have you heard pushback against a roundabout? I mean, I feel like we've been hearing for years people want a roundabout there and one over on Locust.
Yeah, I've got like 6 or 7 places in town I wish we could have a roundabout. I just don't think this is one of them.
Okay. Well, just because you said you get pushback, and I guess I would say that from the constituents I've heard from, they are and actually prefer a roundabout over the 4-way, which weighed into my decision. I didn't say it out loud, so I will say it now.
I guess to address your point first, Emily, I've heard from a number of constituents as well, but most of them are not in favor of a roundabout. Again, that's a limited number of constituents I've talked to. But in looking at this intersection, again, I appreciate what John has done, that he's presented us with 2 really quality ideas in reference to this thing. I think this intersection, while I read a little bit about it as well as Steve did in reference to what roundabouts do, and their supposedly safety is increased for pedestrians in the area of roundabouts and stuff like that. I think this area is highly unique in the fact that you not only have an elementary school there right near the intersection, but you also have a high school within a block or so of the place, which I think you're getting a lot of new drivers into that area. They're going to be running through that roundabout, and I think that's going to add to the being a less safe intersection with that idea in mind. So I guess I'm in favor of the traditional 4-way stop, and I appreciate John, like I said, squaring that up and making it look like a much better intersection the way it was. So I'd be in favor of the 4-way.
Yeah, so I doing some research of my own, kind of evaluating both of our options. I would probably lean, again, I'm kind of a lot like Steve. I think both of them are fine. I would be okay with either one. I'm leaning more towards the traffic circle model for some various reasons. One is because of the pedestrian safety, having a new school with elementary, that's kind of important. 2 is also the traffic flow of it. Again, having some of those schools and pickup and a lot of people coming through that intersection at certain times. Talking back to Travis's point when he watches people cut the corners because everybody's stopping at the stop signs, kind of alleviates that a little bit. Obviously, that would alleviate it anyways because that parking lot's not there. But the reason people are doing that is because of the frustration of having to wait in that line. Having that flow of traffic, I think, is beneficial for those reasons. I understand, like, necessarily the people that are looking at this and probably questioning it and maybe might not be totally sold on it, but I do think too, and back that Kirsten made a point that it's right by a school and there's a high school a block away. We're not the first ones to ever think about putting those roundabouts in those areas, and looking at some of those other communities that have them around their schools and have them around their elementary schools and high schools, and they're able to navigate them fine, and they haven't changed them back because of issues that they've had. So that's kind of where I stand. The one concern that I have with that, though, is that we don't necessarily have an official design of where these things are within the elementary school. So if let's say we go to a roundabout type model and we come to find out that the elementary school is putting their main entrance in a place that does not make a roundabout a viable option, can we, obviously change that. But there would maybe if we told the firm, yes, this is the model we want to go to, would there be issues of changing that, you think?
So, much like when I spoke at the March 31st work session, what I would expect out of the consulting firm would be at least a 30% review and a 90% review, if not a 30, 60, 90.
Okay.
So that 30%, that's where you want to make your changes, like, hey, we're actually going to pivot and go to the other style of intersection. You really want to do that, the 30% review, because at 60%, you've got a lot of, like, your elevations are already done and things like that. That's a pretty drastic change, but it's still doable. So we would, of course, we've been in conversations right now with the school's architect, with the school itself, on their overall designs, but they don't have the finished product. So ideally, they're going to end up with a finished product before 30%.
Okay.
Or we tell them, and I mean, there is some interest, right? I mean, I've heard rumors that maybe the school is a little farther this direction than we thought it would be, right? I mean, there is a notion that we say we're going to put a roundabout in there. Can you know, I don't know. I mean, maybe they need to know that we want a roundabout there or not. If that would help the school with their drawings.
I want to make sure we also hear from Christopher.
I do too, because right now it's 3-3, if you're keeping score at home.
Christopher?
Nope.
I'm going to go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. No. So a lot of people have made some good points tonight. Overall, when it comes to the approaches, as of right now, I feel like, much to what Brent said, and I believe Emily brought up a point in, seeing the conceptual point of, the design of the school as well, and see where that's going. But overall, I feel like, especially if we're focusing on a pedestrian safety component, especially with the demographic that is in that area, I feel like I would be more inclined towards the roundabout option.
Thank you.
I also want to draw attention, there's one element that the four-way has that the roundabout doesn't, and that is the tight turning radius for, if there's two buses and they're both turning into the, it was mentioned that either the rear end or the front end would spin around a little bit wider, which would make it difficult if there were two buses coming, say there's one going right, or just a tighter turning radius for the four-way. I'm not maybe saying that as well, but am I right in that, John? Am I saying that right adequately? Okay. So that's a safety concern that the four-way has that the roundabout does not.
I'd be very grateful. Brent, I think you and Christopher both mentioned enhanced pedestrian safety as a reason you were largely in favor of the roundabout. That doesn't match what I discovered, doing my own reading. And so, I'd love to know what resources or research that the two of you did. And you can certainly send me an email if you remember where you came across that information. I know that roundabouts reduce the severity of automobile-to-automobile crashes for sure, and create a lot less automobile-to-automobile fatalities. They create better visual information for motorists in terms of pedestrians crossing. But I didn't actually see that infill roundabouts near schools had demonstrated safety enhancements for pedestrians. I would certainly change my mind, and I'd be, if I could see that information that you two, were able to find. So I'd love to learn about that. Thanks.
And also too, I don't think just myself and Christopher brought it up. John even mentioned too that the studies about roundabouts and the traffic and the studies for pedestrian safety.
Yeah, so if you look at the Federal Highway Administration, there's a section there on roundabouts and pedestrian safety.
Right, and what I was looking for that I couldn't find was, again, the sort of the studies are all about greenfield roundabouts versus greenfield intersections, and we're talking about something very different. And I guess maybe here's where I haven't found the information that others seem to find easily. So I'd love to be pointed toward it. The other point I'll make that sort of, I want to remind us all that even if we're really efficient at clearing traffic at this intersection, that is not going to alleviate the traffic. It will shift it a block. I mean, there's still going to be lineups everywhere that this intersection leads before and after school, and that's okay. I mean, it's okay for the city to be congested 10 minutes a day, 180 days a year. They're either going to be lined up at this intersection like they are currently, or they're going to be lined up at the next one, which is also happening currently already. So it's not like getting them through that intersection quicker is going to speed things up that much.
Oh, I just lost something that you said.
Is it about pedestrian safety?
It was. Oh, no, actually, it was just about the greenfield, right? I mean, I do think one of the things I thought about is that we aren't really trying to squeeze a roundabout in an existing intersection. That whole intersection, to me, is actually just kind of getting blown out of the water anyway. As we redo the street and the school gets redone, to me, it almost is a little bit like a whole restart in terms of the amount of space that's currently there and will be there as we redo those roads. If we were trying to squeeze it into a place where we weren't really doing all the sides of it, which we are, and the entire infrastructure that's right in front of it, it might be different in my mind, but I do feel like there's a little bit more of a blank canvas that we would be having to build this thing than we would otherwise.
I guess the other thing that I think it's easy for us to undervalue as council members is the sort of negative effects for pedestrians of forcing them to walk out of their way even 30 or 40 feet to cross an intersection and then to have to walk back to get to the sidewalk that they were on. I think that is something that the benefit of traditional, intersection design offers, that this roundabout would, sort of force people to deviate from their route, go upstream a little bit, cross at where the road is narrower, come back to their sidewalk, and continue on their way. It's not behavior that we would ever expect cars to do. I have to be honest. And I encourage you, if you think that this is a good option, maybe every day when you go out to your car for the next few months, walk to the end of the block and back if it's no big deal. I suspect that it won't feel like no big deal.
I would argue, too, though, just as a counterpoint, if you think about a four-way stop after school with pedestrians trying to cross that whole four-way stop, regardless of what is at that intersection, we should actually try to encourage pedestrians not to cross at that intersection during school hours, right? Because there is, what?
What? No, I don't understand.
Well, if you have four-way traffic on the busiest time of the day and pedestrians trying to get across that four-way, no matter how we do it, right, it's not very efficient for walker or for cars. So it does make sense that if we are building a school for pedestrians to walk to, that we guide them beyond that intersection to go into the school at a different location than that intersection. In the same way, if you're using that intersection as a pedestrian to get downtown, then I think the roundabout has more of a benefit than essentially stopping traffic for every person walking across that intersection. You know what I'm saying?
No.
We can take it offline, but
Anyway, I think it's 4-3, unless I convince someone with my words. So, seems like staff has direction.
4-3.
Right, Travis?
I have direction, but
you need a motion. You want a motion?
I do want a motion. Just if you want me to make the change in the RFQ, this does not, and I want to emphasize, this is so that we can help identify the consulting firm that I am leaving the door open a bit, that should council members pivot. I mean, 4-3 can become a different 4-3 very easily. So this vote is so that staff can ensure we are putting the correct information in the RFQ.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that we could, I'm sorry, I just have a suggestion, and I'm wondering if, given that it seems like the current council balance, I didn't hear anyone saying I'm screamingly in favor of or against. I think that if an engineer came and made a really strong case one way or the other, I think all of us would listen to it. Could we at least ask them to provide us a little advice as part of this project?
Yeah, we could offer that. There's probably going to be a little minimal extra cost to provide that initial guidance. I don't think it would be much in the grander scheme of an entire scope project.
we have an engineer. So I guess my mind is, why don't we just ask John? Right, John's right here. Or is that
So,
unfair to ask John?
I'm gonna throw John a lifeline and say, so experts in any field are somebody with experience and live more than 50 miles away.
No, that's unfair. That's what we run. That's the trap we have
Right.
in our world.
So what I'm trying to, and you know, I am honestly, I'm trying to protect John from
Okay, I get it.
siding with one set of group of council members versus another.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's honestly what I'm trying to do.
But I assume that either one of you or John, would step in and be like, you guys don't want a roundabout there. If you thought it was a bad idea.
If we were at that level, absolutely. We would step in and say, council, I'm sorry, but this is a terrible idea. Don't do it. You guys have heard me say it before. My job as staff is to present you guys with options, information to make the decision. You guys make the decision. Then we execute, right?
I am operating under the premise that our engineer gave us 2 great ideas, both of which they were happy with. That makes me, it's kind of like what Brent always says. We're not engineers here, and so we have to evaluate and trust the sources that we have. So I guess I'm comfortable, as Steve, as you said, I think we say we prefer a roundabout, but if our consultant comes back and says, you don't want a roundabout there, I would totally be open to listen.
So you'd be okay with asking for an initial recommendation? I feel like the benefit of that is if the drawing comes back at the 30% completion rate and we're all like, actually, this doesn't seem right, or this doesn't fit with the school's plan, you know, then we've spent some money, we need to go backwards. And so like, for me, I'd like to get that initial, if it's this close, and it feels close to me. You know, a lot of us are fence sitting on this, it seems like, so maybe it'd be worth getting a recommendation from the engineers. Brent, what do you think? I mean, maybe you're just fixed or what?
How much more?
I guess while Brent's thinking for a second, I'd just like to echo Steve's comments too about, I would like to see some research in reference to this, because like I said, I think this is a unique intersection here in the fact that you've got 2 different school areas, one with new drivers and one with young children that are going to be traversing these streets, and I think that proposes a unique set of circumstances that I don't know that we have maybe the research. I haven't seen it like Steve, so I would prefer to see it if somebody knows of some that would show that.
I will, guys, I will send you the Federal Highway Administration and roundabout, their whole input on roundabouts and their countermeasure to safety and public
If the
safety.
mayor will give me 3 hours to talk about the poor choices embedded in the Federal Highway Administration's engineering advice, I would love to take it. All right, then I don't think we should take that as gospel, because there's a lot of problems there.
Yeah. Okay, so you have a 4-3, just minimal.
I think I will trust you to know what to put in the document, knowing
Oh, don't do that.
Okay, well, you've got 4-3 in favor of a roundabout, but I think we're open to an engineer saying, this would be a better option.
I move that we proceed with the assumption that the current council lean of a roundabout is the preferred option, but please indicate to the engineers that the council is open and eager for any perspectives that they would like to share with us if they think that that's worth rethinking. Does that seem okay?
That's great.
That sounds good.
That is why you are an elected official.
Yeah.
Great wording with that.
Could I get a second?
Second.
Who seconded? Okay. Motion made by Zittergruen, seconded by Neal. Any further discussion?
Just want to know, my comment there was not meant to be a
It-
dig or anything.
Right. Could you
please
please read the motion back?
Yep, I have, to have the RFQ indicate that the current desire of the majority of council is a roundabout, but open to discussion on the intersection.
Yeah, to direction or whatever.
Yep.
Direction?
Yeah. Is that?
Okay.
Safety, we've only had 2 accidents and they were in 2022.
Okay. Roll call?
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Chisel,
No.
Whittle,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Misselinich.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, discussion on Chapter 22.22 Board of Park Commissioners. First off, I want to hear from the people that put this on the agenda, but I did want to make a comment that I was sad that we were discussing it at this time because we had had a lengthy discussion on it. And the idea was to send it to have the board, park board, work with things and continue to work in a positive manner. So I was surprised that we're discussing this again this soon. Perhaps down the road a little bit, but I think that there has to be, you know, if you're not content, then I think that some of that should go directly to the park board.
And
But we had two people, so, and from what I gathered, for maybe two different reasons, I don't know.
Well, I'm happy to say why.
Okay, so I knew that you're one, and I think is it Christopher that was the other one?
Yes, it's me, Mayor.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, I think it's a really good example, Mayor, of an instance in council where someone on the prevailing side brings it back, right? I mean, I think I advocated for sort of this, like, let's see what's happening and bring it back. That was, and so I advocated for that at the last time we talked about it. Have thought and seen some inefficiencies in the way that we're doing things with Park Board, and wanted to bring back this discussion, not in light of what's happening this year, but what I've just noticed overall, and what I can see development with staff. So I'm happy to share why I brought it up. I think one of the things that I've seen, and actually I felt it when, before all of this with horses and such blew up, and we were asked to look at park rules. And some people were not on council at the time, but we were handed park rules and told we don't really have say in them, but we should look at them and give our stamp of approval that didn't really mean anything anyway, because it was up to Park Rec to come up with park rules. And that was confusing to me as a council member, but I was like, okay, well, they must know what they're doing and go with it. But what I have noticed over the last couple years since that, I think it's been 2 years since that time, is that there is a not a very clear delineation between park board responsibility that doesn't blend into what I consider to be council responsibility. And so when I was looking and talking with Travis a little bit, I think that we need to clean up the code and delineate what is park board responsibility and how the park board communicates with council in order to share the responsibility of our parks in a way that keeps our commissions able to do the things we're supposed to do. So as a council member, I have been very frustrated on several levels in that I feel like my role as a council member is to look at the big picture of Decorah, think about the financial fiduciary responsibility, and set priorities about what we're doing in Decorah. And setting priorities in Decorah is also setting priorities in our parks. Those two things overlap. The parks are an essential component of our community. And so I feel like there's just been a lot of disconnect between what we're setting as council priorities and what's happening on Park Board. And then that translates to stress for staff, because staff now has two commissions potentially telling them two different things, and that can be very unsettling as an employee of an entity. And I think we need to clean that up so that our park employees, but also our city manager, has like, council is setting this priority and this is why, and we need to move in this direction, and park board should be moving in that direction because that's our role. Along with that, I feel like park rules fit into that category in terms of land use and how it is we are going to prioritize the use of our land, the preservation of our land, because all of that ties into our fiduciary responsibility to the land and what we will have to invest in land if we aren't, if we choose one priority over another. And so that's why I brought it up. Essentially, those are the things I want to look at, is land use, which I think is there's this big overlap of land use that comes with council and our priorities, and our what we're being asked to do as a commission and elected to do, and clear up the clear delineation that staff works for Travis, Travis works for us. And so as we think about who is then directing staff, right, it should be Travis, and Travis is getting his direction from our priorities that we set. And to have another board stepping in and saying, do this, do that, becomes, you know, what do you do as an employee? I think I've been in that situation as an employee where you're just like, oh, this person's my boss and this person's my boss, and they're not agreeing. And it's a very uncomfortable place to be. That's why I brought it up.
Okay. Christopher?
Yeah, so much like Emily, I feel like, I've had some frustrating points in regards to some actions as of lately, and I feel like I know myself and a majority of council have also heard from a wide variety of individuals on, recent decisions. And so my biggest thing is I feel like shifting the overall oversight of park rules um, maybe into the city council purview would also enhance accountability and overall parks policies when it comes to broader city initiatives and overall community values for all trail-based groups. Um, I feel like, we have heard challenges faced by a lot of trail users the last couple months. Um, and I feel like it should be noted that we need a system that not only, leverages those, but exert insights through, both an oversight of, us as an individual group um, and fosters overall public engagement from individual based groups. I feel like this approach to would also show that recent concern has brought up from a lot of individuals, regardless of one's viewpoint, that um, there are a lot of trail groups within this community. And I feel like this would also allow us to effectively, to Emily's point, address, overall issues that may stem from that, and also allow for continued, approach to trail utilization and overall public park utilization and integrity of our park system for all trail user groups.
I guess my question would be, for both of you, so to speak, what section would you be looking at to change in 222? Would it be 030, the powers and duties that are assigned to the park rec, or would it be more, what is it, 22080, which defines the rules for the parks, or both, or what are you thinking? What's your recommendation for what you're looking at to do?
I wanted a discussion with that action because I really did want to have a discussion in what people are seeing and thinking. In my mind, I would actually just like to direct staff to look at how other park boards and councils work, and to provide a recommendation that would alleviate what we've expressed as our concerns. I think that when I did a quick search on how other park boards work, I mean, it's a very rare thing to have an elected park board in the first place.
Right.
In fact, we might be the only place in Iowa that the second.
I worked at the other one.
Okay, there are only 2 communities
Right.
in Iowa that have elected park boards, and I think, as I was talking to a few friends from my hometown, I think that this is the reason why, right? This is that it becomes very confusing when you have 2 elected boards trying to manage the same piece of property. And so I guess, in my mind, knowing what our concerns are, I think staff could do a much better job than we could in terms of thinking or John actually, sorry, you'd have to write the code, how we could alleviate some of what we're feeling, clear up for constituents, and figure out who is responsible for what in managing our parkland. So that would be what I would say, and whether that is that park board starts to look a little bit more like P&Z, that is something that I think we should look towards as a model of a advisory recommendation, or, maybe we have a supermajority overrule. I don't know, but somehow there has to be an intersection.
So you would be open to going all the way from taking this away from being an elected board all the way down to just changing some rules in regards to how it functions and how it relates to the council and staff and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean,
anywhere in between, whatever?
anywhere, because, I mean,
Okay.
what I'm seeing is it's not functional.
Right.
And it's not serving our parks, it's not serving our constituents. As I've said earlier, I've actually had more letters about this and continue to have more letters about this than any other controversial issue that I've had, minus the MEU. And so that's where I'm like, that's why I brought it back, Mayor, because I don't think this problem is going away.
Christopher, how about you?
And I would like to follow up with that as well. To Emily's point that she just made, I honestly, much like herself, I feel like this is an issue that I, continue to hear constituent points from, and that I feel like it's not going to go away anytime soon. And I feel like if we, as elected officials need to do our due process and, acknowledge this and bring this up in a conversation point. I do like, Emily's point that she brought up in regards to, staff maybe having a better, overall perception and doing some potential research on other structures throughout the state in regards to collaborative effort between their councils and their park boards and structure and how that's made up.
Would staff feel comfortable taking on that role of figuring out how best to deal with this situation or whatever, and make recommendations as far as like taking away from being an elected body all the way down to just changing some of the rules or how we function
so far
together?
we've only heard from 3 out of the 7.
Right.
That doesn't get us to a quorum.
Right. But I'm just
And the third
Right.
is you serving as mediator and asking additional questions. So I don't even know where you lie.
okay.
I can make it for Travis. Here's what I think. I think that there's kind of 2 different buckets of issues here, and the first bucket is maybe stuff worth solving right now, or at least addressing, and the other one, I don't know if we want to add it to our workload right now. The second bucket is stuff like the existence of a park board as an elected or appointed body. Does it function more like P&Z? What are its sort of like rules and who sets them? Big questions, good work to do. I'd love to put a pin in it and say, let's get that done in 2026 or 7 when we don't have fiber, municipal building, Hively, Dalen, Carlson, and 16 other things going on. Because staff is doing enough right now, I think. It's like, I don't want to ask them to do a research project right now about how other communities do this. I want to make sure that what we have right now, and this is the second bucket, is working. And I think it's pretty obvious that it's not working great right now. So how do we make it work for now while we have the structural fix later? I think that would be a good goal for us. How do we make it work right now? I think one way we could do is to give staff clear direction on, Travis had mentioned earlier that he has a spending authority, right? He said earlier, like, if he's going to spend more than $9,500 or whatever, he needs to bring it to us. Maybe we need to establish a spending authority for parks to pursue any work related to expanding access for equestrian use, and just put an upper cap on it. Say that, for this year, we can't have this be an endless pit of money just because the park board, voted one way or another. What if we just set some hard lines for what, we're willing to see staff do, and we're willing to see the city spend on this particular issue? We can give that direction to staff right now, and that can be the end of it till next year.
Wait.
That's my preference.
Okay, I want to be clear. This isn't about equestrian use in our parks. This is about rules and regulations in our park for all users. And this isn't about setting money to it. It's about literally establishing rules. So unless you want to hire an outside contractor to tell us what our park rules should be, which I don't think we want to do, if you want to direct staff to do something, I would say, well, let's direct staff to make park rules before spring hits so that we have something going on that's going to protect our parks. Because I'm concerned right now that our park rules don't match the decisions that have been made. And I'm also just trying to clear up what I would consider, I don't like using the chain of command, but I don't know any other way to express it. That doesn't require money. I don't think we need to throw money at this. I don't think we should be throwing any money at this. It is about code and cleaning up code. I agree with you. I don't know that we should tackle whether or not to have park board elected or appointed at this particular time, but I think we can clean up code enough that we can delineate the power of what it is we want for land use in our parks and who is ultimately responsible for deciding that. And also then the priorities, right? I mean, of the cat in the bag, I guess I would say, right, Park Board has a priority of Carlson Park, Council has a priority of Dalen, and our poor staff is sitting here going like, who am I answering to and what am I doing? So I'm actually, like, this isn't just about horses. This is literally how government is functioning and how it is not functioning right now.
I would agree with Emily on that one. I feel like at the end of the day, it's overall functionality, not just in relation to specific trail user groups.
So what would it take, John and Travis? Because I really actually think it's code, right? And this is on John more than Travis, to just say, how do we clean up the code to hash a little bit more content into things like park rules and land use and clear responsibility?
So I would say this is more from an operational standpoint as opposed to code-wise. It is in code that the park and rec director works for the city manager, and don't take this as a power trip. That's not what this is meant to be, but it's so that we can operate effectively. He reports to the city manager, I report to the council as a whole. Now that's to your comment before about the focus, priorities, where do priorities lie? If you have conflicting priorities between council and park board, that's from a staff perspective, an operating perspective, the biggest difficulty. Because staff is operating to try and get council's goals and priorities achieved, which it's not even backburnering some of park board's priorities that don't necessarily align with council's top priorities. It might slow them a bit, but quite frankly, even our existing, it's not slowing. It's contributing to burnout of staff, quite frankly. I mean, I'm sending emails Friday night, Saturday from the kitchen table, telling John to quit working, go home, telling Jess quit working, go home, telling Mark quit working, go home, don't answer this email till Monday. So it's not that it's stuff that's even getting backburnered or even slowed down. It's getting to the point it's overwhelming because we are trying to make both boards happy and it's not working.
Right.
Because even though we're trying to achieve both goals and priorities, some view that we aren't trying to achieve park board's priorities. Why is this project already out to bid versus this one still not out there yet? Well, that's because we've had back and forth with the DOT multiple times on the design elements over trivial stuff, but we turn and burn it within 24 to 48 hours, get it back to DOT for review to get this additional $300,000 in funding. So I don't, mine. I'll speak for myself. I don't necessarily want Mark to chime in if he doesn't feel that he should, because I certainly get Mark certainly sees this pressure way more than I do. I don't have park board members coming into my office saying, hey, where are we at with this? Where are we at with this? But I do know you as council members are getting emails from park board members saying, hey, why isn't this further along? Where is this at? Why isn't this done yet? That are park board's goals and priorities, but they don't align with what council's goals and priorities are. I mean, I'll admit, I did tee up in the department head report listing off all the different projects that are ongoing, and I didn't throw out there fiber to the premises because it's been one of those outstanding that it seems to be just insurmountable. Every time we start charging up that hill, we get knocked back down. We've got another meeting followed up tomorrow that hopefully we can get this thing across the finish line here. But these are all things that we're trying to achieve, that some other stuff, and I don't want to say even big projects, there's small stuff that's falling through the cracks, whether it's maybe a C3 design permit that sits on a desk too long and doesn't catch historic preservation's review at time. Like, it's getting to the point, again, speaking for myself, that it's not
Yeah, so I guess Emily, maybe a better way of framing what I was trying to say earlier is I'm worried that any attempted solution not add more to the plate of staff.
And I know that's where
so-
you're headed.
Yeah, however we get there, if I want this to be easier when all is said and done. So staff, do you think a special meeting very soon when we can give you direction on how to prioritize projects this year, or what would be best?
You know, that would be beneficial for the short term. And one of the things I do think would be beneficial is that reiteration that we are working to achieve not just the council's goals and priorities, but I get everybody, they want their project done first. And they're all advancing is the thing. And when you're trying to advance 17 different things at one time, they all move slow, right? They all can't be first. So that's one of the reasons we're behind the 8 ball, quite frankly, on the Dalen property development out there. I mean, quite frankly, I'd love to have all the funding secured and ready to go right now, but we're not there yet. I don't want to take this as a criticism of the park board, but you talk about some of the inefficiencies and stuff. The more layers of government we create, oh my God, that sounds like the Doge.
Careful.
But the more, for instance, the Carlson Park plan, the design, the Dalen property, bid letting, like, we're structuring all of these so that they not only go through council for, setting the public hearing, holding the bid letting, holding the public hearing and award here, we're staging all these so that they go out, we get those in, we can aggregate them, we take them to park board, and we say, here's what we got for bids, what are your guys' thoughts? Then we can bring those back to the council. Like, we're structuring these so that they can participate as well.
And that's where I feel like if we could delineate who is doing what a little bit better than we are, that would help. Like, you shouldn't have to bring that to park board and then bring it to us.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So just to kind of add on to Steve's thought process of not wanting to bring more to staff when they're already busy, is it fair to say by fixing this problem, it almost helps you by taking that extra work off?
At a minimum, just my ask is that we emphasize that council works for you. Sorry. I work for you. That's what I meant. I work for you. Mark works for me. We work to achieve council's goals and priorities, which does often include park and rec priorities. But if they don't overlap, they don't rise to the top.
I think that's good. I do think we have to figure out the park rules on land use, because I think that is, people are upset. In our communities, we work for the people of Decorah. And so I guess in cleaning that up, I would like to clean that up as well. And then figure out, like, do we really have to have park board approve the contract and then us approve the contract, or how best do we make these projects more efficient in terms of who's overseeing what? And that also needs to be addressed. And I do think sometimes it is do a little bit more work to then breathe through these 11, 17, 18, 20 projects that we have going on.
Is that as simple as changing some of the verbiage in 222, section 222?
I mean, there is some ways to strengthen it.
Okay.
But again, it's already in code that the park rec director works for the city manager, and the park board is to work with the park and rec director, not direct, not the park rec director does not work for the park board. And I get it's a delicate balance where, I mean, anytime a council member comes in and we talk about different things going on with the city, it's a delicate balance between getting information, trying to help reach a decision, and providing a direction. Like, coming in, if you guys were to continuously come into my office and say, Travis, why don't we have, I'm struggling, I don't want to give you guys any ideas. I almost said wellness center. I was like, please, God, for the love of God, no. But in all seriousness, it'd be like if one of you came in and said, Travis, why haven't we done anything about the wellness center yet? That's what we get from time to time with, and Park Board is our topic at hand. It happens with others as well. But that's my point, is that sometimes we get individuals coming in saying, hey, this should be further along. Why isn't this done yet? Why isn't this done yet? It's a balance between your role as a council member or Park Board member and as a resident, right? Because when you're individually meeting with me, yes, you're a council member, but you have no further authority than a resident.
What you just said gave me an idea. So in code, it's Park Board works with the park manager. Why can't we then have code be Park Board works with the council, right? Why are we so separate in the ways in which we work that we are having these unintended consequences of slower government than we need, duplication of some services that we're both providing, and confusing, right, staff, what it is, making more work for you than you have to. It's like, I got to ask this person, and then I got to ask this person, as opposed to, I just have to ask this person. These people are going to know, kind of like sustainability, right? Sustainability, they get information, they process that information, they're able to provide us with some guidance, or our engineer, or our P&Z. It does seem to me that Park Board could be more of an advisory or some kind of a partner organization that's helping guide and give us these things. I mean, I don't think we have capacity to take on everything from Park Board, but there are so many, well, not even so many. There are a few things that just seem like when they're not in our purview, it seems like somehow we are shirking our responsibility to hold this big picture of Decorah.
And one of the other aspects in code, when you talk about sections to change that would help alleviate this, you talk about the fiduciary responsibility. So in code, it says that the park board is to approve a budget to recommend to council. Now, we haven't gotten into that with, there was only one item, I believe, that we cut out of the park and rec budget for this year, where I did openly state, this is purely I shouldn't say purely, it had a financial aspect to it, but it was largely because of workload. I didn't believe we had sufficient staff to handle all the proposed projects within the park rec capital projects budget. But there were numerous projects proposed that were all recommendation from Park Board that some of those don't necessarily align with council's goals and priorities. So is that within council's purview to say no, no, no? Now, I argue yes, because at the end of the day, the city council must adopt a budget for the city of Decorah. But I would agree with you that the park board, if it continues to exist and operate essentially as it is today, it really needs to be in conjunction with the council and get direction from the council on what your goals and priorities are to make sure those align. Because otherwise, if they're coming from park board to the council without input, that's one of our reasons we have this problem.
Yeah, and that was very much the park rules, right? That was the problem with, I think, park rules when they came about. That we weren't tasked with thinking about park rules and then providing recommendations, having them write them, and then bring them back. We were given a set of documents and then said, you don't really have any input, but here you go. And so that we need to change that. I think how that works. So I know this is clear as mud, but do you feel like you could bring back some recommendations in a?
I'll have to just start looking at examples of other communities and how they interact with their park boards and their models, and see if we can come up with any suggestions, working with Travis and Mark.
Okay, and is there a way, I mean, see, I don't even know the way. If we said, look, spring is coming up, we need some park rules on the use of our trails to align with the decisions that Park Board has made, we can't direct you to do that. to direct staff to do
I
that?
would say you would need a recommendation from Park Board. The way code reads,
It's
Okay.
park board makes
council
it.
only approves rules brought to you from the Park Board.
And
You
that's
could
where I-
vote no.
And that's what I feel like needs to change. I mean, I just feel like we should be able to say to you, we're seeing this problem in Decorah, constituents are calling us constantly. Can you please work with staff to come up with these things and work with Park Board to come up with a plan for Decorah's parks in terms of rules and regulations?
So is your idea, Emily, that with the rules, it would be kind of the P and Z model where they make a recommendation
Yeah,
on the
Yeah.
rules, and then ultimately, city council can approve them, they can modify them, they can turn them down?
yeah, especially, I just feel like if we're directing Travis, who's directing staff, there is no mechanism to do rules unless we direct Travis to direct the staff, but we don't have that authority.
Yeah, and at the end of the day,
And
even
that's
if
the problem,
staff
and at the end
drafts
of the
them,
day.
unless they're taken up by Park Board, they can't make it
Otherwise,
here.
we get things that are just written by individual park board members, which
But when
we
you,
don't write our own rules either, right? We recommend to you, you provide us the input.
but when you talk about rules, I mean, I'm thinking there's all sorts of rules, from what you do at the pool, pool hours. I mean, there's a lot of nitty gritty there to kind of bigger items like hours of you can be in Phelps Park or Palisades, or what trails you can use for mountain biking, hiking, equestrian use.
That's why I like the idea of it sort of being this advisory, like they would handle it, but we would have the ability to have input.
Yeah, I'm just thinking some of those, I guess it'd be a question for Mark. I mean, do you really, I imagine there's some rules and operating procedures out there you don't want to have to bring to the council, and I'm having a tough time
I'm
delineating.
trying not to have them, I'm trying to put them in the hands of the staff,
Oh.
right? I'm actually trying to put them in the hands of the staff and not in a board.
What-
Right now, they're in the hands of a board because,
Because they're elected.
what?
Because they're elected.
Well, but not only that, but it's unclear. So you have rules in the hand of a board that Mark doesn't answer to because he answers to Travis, who answers to us.
Yeah, I guess what position does that put Mark in, though?
A terrible one.
If he creates rules in the park boards, like, what are you doing, Mark?
That's why
Well,
I mean,
that's why it's important to note that Mark doesn't work for the Park Board.
Yeah.
Again, he works for the city manager, who works for the council.
this is to just uncovered what I think it is. I want staff to be able to create park rules based on what they work with. This is their job, right? And then they say, here's what we think they should be, here's why, and council and park board can say, hey, have you thought about this? Can you do this? We'd like to see that, and that there's some kind of input.
So you would like to see 22280 changed, instead, where it says the board shall have the power to make rules and regulations for the use of park or other recreational facilities. You'd like to see that out of there and changed.
Or advise
staff.
advise the council on rules, and the council can then direct it back to staff like we do everything else.
So like the Sustainability Commission, Historic Preservation, to that extent. I mean, even with Historic Preservation, they have a few additional things that they can endorse. You know, C3 design, it's an endorsement, but it is not necessarily, if they don't endorse it, if it still meets code, it still has to be adopted. So potentially something along those lines where they weigh in, provide comments, and then you know, C3 design sign permits, our code allows for the zoning administrator, myself, to sign off after their review. So you at least, you get to look at it, provide your comments, but at the end of the day, I issue based on being the zoning administrator if it meets code. We could do something similar to that effect. And we could do similar to with the police department. I'm trying to think of blending some recent activities so with the police department, we have, we changed code to reflect that the
Policies and procedures.
policies and procedures are approved, or drafted by the police chief and approved by the city manager.
I think we divided it between.
One comes to council for final adoption.
Policies do versus, and we define that, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but we define the difference between policies versus, we're not gonna tell the chief how to, operate a crime scene, difference.
Right.
But then there are the bigger picture policies that govern the,
Residency requirement.
or, I don't know, bigger picture items, not the daily activities of how they conduct a specific action.
Force
Yeah.
policies
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
I mean, when you said that, it makes a lot of sense, right? In terms of the chief drafts them, she brings them to you. There are things that we should look at. There are things that we don't need to look at. I feel like, and I hope I'm not giving, in some ways I feel like I'm giving Mark more to do, but I'm saying you should have the freedom to be able to create park rules and then have us weigh in, but not waiting for a board to draft rules.
Yeah, and I guess an example that comes to mind with the police department is that they follow the city's anti-harassment policies, anti-bias policies, but then they use those policies to implement their own procedures. And maybe the chief can give a better example, but that's what came to my mind.
I like the framing of the P&Z type. I'm not privy to previous conversations that have been happening, but from what I've been hearing from constituents and folks involved with process, it's been a frustrating, things have been getting held up that should be going through. And the parks are one of the most important things of the community as far as my feelings on things and the reason why people live in this town. And I'd like to be able to help take some of that as far as decision-making going, or if they were able to send certain decisions up to us, if they're at a particularly sticky spot. It seems like some important things have been getting kind of held up in the bureaucracy of everything. So I think something like the P&Z, where they make the suggestions, put work into why they've done that, and then review with city council after, if that makes sense.
This seems like we're not. I think that there's at least some. I feel like a lot of us at least want some of the same things here. I think it's really important that we include the elected officials of the park board in these conversations before we go too far. I'd like to talk to them about some of these things, and I don't know, how to arrange that conversation in a way that doesn't just create another big to-do list item for our staff right now. And so this is we're back to my concerns here, and I wonder if, again, there's like a long-term solution, which is sit down with the park board in a few months and hammer out, kind of clear rules and regulations, fix code if we need to fix it. Consider, kind of everything in terms of how the park board relates to the city and how we relate to the park board and how I don't think we should do that right now. I think that right now staff just needs us to tell them what our priorities are, and then they just need to be really clear with the park board, that they can't do X, Y, Z because council's instructed them to do A, B, C. So for me, I think we solve this problem right away by, as soon as possible, giving staff what they need from us, which is clear direction about where they need to be spending their time and energy and city resources. And in the long term, this is clearly a relationship we need to fix. I'd like to put a pin in that part of it.
So if I hear you correctly, Steve, you're saying setting the priorities first would be the first thing on the agenda for us to do?
I think
as
that's
opposed to getting involved in.
I think that's
the
the fire to
messy
put
details
out.
of this.
And before we start rewriting regulations without talking to the Parks Board first, I think we can maybe do that in due time. But right now, staff needs clear direction about where their energy should be. And
I think we can still save time if we clear up the ability for staff to be able to do the things that they need to do without having to filter through park board and filter through us. or filter through us and not park board. Again, going back to rules and regulations and this whole, were you saying RFQs, right? Where you had to go to the park board and then you have to come to us for,
Oh, so the bid letting.
Bid letting.
Bid letting we structure them so that the bids, when they come in, that they're reviewed first by the park board, that, yep, we like these bids, we like the overall project, we recommend council make award. And then we come back to council, and then that's where ultimately the award happens.
Okay, I have a suggestion then. And Emily, you tell me if you think this meets what you want. If not, let's keep working on it and figure out what we can direct staff right now. I personally would like to tell staff, please feel free to come to us with any proposals for ways to rewrite regulations that we have the power to rewrite that you think would make your job easier in the meantime, and make things clearer in the meantime. But, right?
yeah, that is exactly what I would like.
That's fine. Like, if it's worth it to
Sounds
you to clear things up, we'll do it. If you feel like we're asking you to do things that don't actually help you in the next 3 months or 6 months, I don't want to do that right now. I want to do that next year in conversation with the park board.
I agree.
Also, I would like to direct staff to, as soon as possible, get feedback from council so that we can establish clear priorities. Because there's just too much on, we have a lot of really good things happening, and we have staff who, I'd rather do 5 things really well than 7 things not as well.
And that's general speaking.
Yes, yeah.
That's right.
So those are the 2 things that I would like to say, and if other people want to nod, if they think that that's a good, what do you think, Emily? I think this might be,
Somebody's on,
Oh.
not on mute. Anyhow, I appreciate that, Steve. I think that is the best directive. I will say, it is springtime, and I do want to see our park have rules, and I do think staff should be allowed to create park rules to either give to park board to somehow, we need some park rules. We've added the addition of horses. It's very unclear. Our current rules don't cover them. And so I am concerned. I've been on the trails. I know how muddy they are. We don't have any mechanism for how closures, when they can be on them, how they evaluate how they're going to be on them. We don't have any recommendations of how many horses can be on them, or how, do they have to clean up after themselves? And so to me, those are priorities for the park, but I feel like staff has a good idea of like rules that we could implement, and they don't have a mechanism in which to implement them because park board sets the rules. And so until we clean that up, we can't direct staff to do the rules. So I guess a quick fix in my mind is the parks director sets the rules and gets approval from the park board and council, or however that needs to get cleaned up.
I appreciate Steve's suggestion, along with some of the thoughts you have, to see how we can move forward.
so basically the suggestion that I made was, staff, please bring to us anything that you think would help you clear things up and make things more sort of in terms of power sharing, in terms of how decisions are made and who's accountable to whom. Please bring that to us insofar as you think it helps clarify things to do your jobs in the next short term. And Emily, I think we should keep pressing the long-term fixes too. Yep.
No, that's fine. And I think that hopefully you have enough direction with that.
I think that was well said, Steve.
Okay. So we have 2 vacancies on the Decorah Human Rights Commission, 1 vacancy on planning and zoning, and I believe those applications would be in April 25th, was that what you said?
Yep.
And then my intent is to reappoint Steve Rundy to the Civil Service Commission, but that requires a 30-day opening, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any other matters to become before the council? Move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.